January 30 school board work session. We have all members present and we have a quorum. We'd like to have Mr. Twigg lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If the Assembly would please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Twigg. I also want to make an administrative announcement that if you have a cell phone, make sure that it's either placed on silent or turned off so we do not disturb or interrupt the meeting. We have before us 1.03, the agenda for this evening. This time the chair will entertain a motion to adopt this agenda.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Twigg.
Second.
Second by Ms. Phelps. Any discussion? We'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 7-0. We'll go ahead and begin with opening comments. Dr. Baker.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to help you and all of us take a deeper dive into the budget proposal that I had the pleasure and honor of presenting on Monday night. I want to thank our staff who has worked diligently to provide you with a great deal of detail behind what was a high-level proposal for this FY 2020 budget. One point of clarification that I always think is important, because some of us that are visual and literal, it's always good to understand when we were going through the budget priorities that I outlined on Monday night. They are not only to be viewed as independent priorities where you may see various investments that are tied to those priorities, but that was to help you see and visualize how they can support those. But it is not to suggest that the totality of those investments do not indeed collectively support all three priorities. So I'd ask you that you also kind of view it in terms of system thinking, that many things that may have been attributed to one particular priority, such as compensation or investments in certain human resources, they, in my mind and I think in our staff's mind, really help to contribute to achieving all three budget priorities that have been laid out before you. So with that, I thank you, and I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Baker. We're going to move into 3.01, but before I begin with Ms. Gaines for the projected revenue details, I would like to ask the board. We have a very extensive agenda, and we want to make sure that it flows and that we are cognizant of the time that we have available. So as each person presents, we would ask that we hold questions until after that particular presentation, and then we will give each board member an opportunity to engage in questions and also dialogue. I believe there's one presentation that Ms. Colbert is giving where there's an opportunity to ask for questions at that time. We will stop and entertain questions as per her briefing slides, and then we will continue and then finish up with questions. So with that being said, we're going to go on with 3.01, projected revenue details. Ms. Gaines.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Chair, school board members, Dr. Baker and Dr. Martin. As we begin this evening, we do want to verify that you have two documents in front of you. The first document is going to be your PowerPoint presentation for this evening, and then you should also have a copy of the superintendent's budget booklet. So in this evening, I'm asking for the floor computer at this time. So you can basically see what we plan to cover this evening. We're going to start off first with the preliminary revenue details. Then we're going to give you details on the needs and proposed investments. You're going to have a presentation from HR, the Future Educators Academy overview. Then we're excited to bring to you an additional initiative for the Health Insurance Action Plan. Mr. Uppercole will share with you the revised 2020-2014 CIP plan, We want to have detailed discussion by the board this evening, and then we'll talk a little bit about next steps. So if I can first draw your attention to the PowerPoint presentation, you'll basically see here on slide number 4, the school division has in total 6 revenue sources. And when you look at these 6 revenue sources, you'll see that the 2 highest revenue sources is your state and your local. When looking at the CIP included, for the state, they're basically 43% of the total budget. When you look at the local, you're looking at about 36% of the budget. The good news that we do have this evening, when you look at the state revenue, you're looking at almost $150 million. This is about a $15 million increase since 2009. So that's huge. The other thing we want to draw your attention to, when you look at CIP is actually going down by 1.9 based on updated and completed projects according to our CIP plan. So in total, the presentation coming from our superintendent on Monday, the total is $350.3 million. When you look at the pie chart that's before you, here we just want to highlight again, the top 2 revenue sources are your state and your local. When you look at slide number 6, you're basically looking at the funding less CIP. When you look at it from this perspective, the state funding is now 47%. And then your local revenue is 40%. So again, when you take your state revenues and your local revenues, this makes up 87% of our total revenues of the 321. This is another perspective that you can see in terms of your revenues. If you just look at this particular chart, it takes you back to 2009, and it ends at 2019. So for your state, over this 10-year period, you had an $8 million increase, or 6%. For the locality, a $7 million increase, or 6%. You can see here with your federal, that's gone up about $4 million, and then for your other, that has gone up about $1 million. Yet another perspective when looking at your revenues. Here we started 2009, but we take you all the way through 2020. So over this particular period, you will see that we started in 2009 with our state funding of $135 million. Based on the predictions coming from the governor's budget, if everything lands accordingly, we could end with 150. But we do want you to know that we do have some concerns, that there may be some adjustments. When you look at the local budget, back in 2009, you see $120 million. Based on what they're projecting for 2020, we're looking at $127 million. So in actuality, for the local funds over a 10-year period, you're only looking at an increase of $7 million. When compared to the state, $15 million. Now, this is another perspective. When you look at this particular slide, slide number 9, when you look at the county, they have many revenue sources. We primarily receive our funding from the County General Revenue Fund. So if you look here at 2000, you'll see back then the school division was receiving almost 61% of the county's General Revenue Fund. And the county was receiving about 40%. Then if you take a look at 2019, the $127 million, we're now down to about 48%. And the county's up to 52%. So we just wanted you to see that particular illustration. This particular slide basically shows you the footnotes. These notes are actually taken directly from the county finance staff, and one of the things that they do when they present information, sometimes they include the one-time funds and sometimes they exclude the one-time funds. So we wanted to make sure that you had all of the specific details as it pertains to the various footnotes that you see on page 9. And this is something that one of the school board members does access each year, so we wanted to go ahead and provide it to you and be proactive. So now let's talk a little bit about the state monies. If I can draw your attention to slide number 11. Now, these particular indicators that you see here are the ones that are specific to Spotsylvania County Schools. So, number one, when you look at the salary increase, the state is looking at a 5% increase. This is the highest increase in 15 years that the state is recommending or proposing. When you look at it, it's over a 2-year period. I was informed by the Virginia Department of Ed, a CFO, that if the school division does choose to implement, we are required to do a local match, and we're required to do a certification to VDOE by June the 1st. Now, 2 things I want you to recall. Number one, this particular initiative is over a 2-year period, 19 and 20. So what I mean by that is that if you provided an increase in 19, you do receive credit towards the 5%. Also, it's important for you to note that for this particular amount for Spotsylvania County Schools, the funding is $4.6 million. Therefore, the local share is about the same, about $5 million. And in order to provide a 5% pay raise to all Spotsylvania County employees, it's about $9.1 million. So we want you to keep that number in mind. The next item that you see, this is a key initiative, $36 million for increasing school counselors. Now, per the state, we were informed that this is a 3-year phased approach. So right now, if you look at the elementary level for 2020, for every 500 students, we were required to have 1 counselor. The new number is that we must have, for every 375 students, 1 counselor. The middle school level, the ratio is going from 400 students to 325. The high school level, we're going from 350 to 300. But ultimately, by 2022, they are stating that regardless of the level, for every 250 students, you must have 1 counselor. So when you look at this particular initiative, the state is proposing $36 million. It's a 3-year phased approach, and the local share for this particular item is about $30 million statewide. The last initiative that relates to the schools relates to the VPI program. Here they're indicating statewide $10 million. So with that, what we want to do at this time is to give you an update as to where we stand with our own VPI program. So I'm going to draw your attention to page 12, and I'm going to ask Ms. Flanard to present this particular slide. Ms. Flanard.
Thank you and good evening. I would like to point out that we have 3 opportunities at our current school division in which students can receive preschool services. That is through our VPI program, Virginia Preschool Initiative, the Head Start program, and our Early Childhood Special Education program. The VPI, or Virginia Preschool Initiative, currently has 7 classes, and they are located on the screen before you: Cedar Forest, Harrison Road, Livingston, 2 at Riverview, 1 at Salem, and 1 at Wilderness. We have 7 Head Start classes, 2 at Cedar Forest, 1 at Cortland Elementary, Harrison Road Elementary, R.E. Lee, Salem, and Wilderness. We also have 3 inclusion programs, and that is at Chancellor, Berkeley, and John J. Wright. And currently, our VPI students, there are 139 students in the VPI program and 122 in Head Start. I do get the question often, I believe Mr. Blaine asks how many VPI slots do we have. We currently have 329 VPI slots. So therefore, about 190 VPI slots are not currently being utilized. For early childhood special education, we currently are serving 268 preschool students with disabilities across 26 classrooms. 68 of those students will be entering kindergarten. Later in the budget presentation, you will notice that we are asking for an additional early childhood special education program, and further detail will be provided on the background to the why we are asking for an additional preschool.
You're welcome. So now if we can draw your attention to slide 13. We want to continue to make a distinction between ADM, which is your average daily membership, as well as your student enrollment. So when you look at slide 13, we wanted you to be aware that for the budget cycle that we are preparing for, FY 2020, staff is projecting that the particular ADM will be $23,258. And we were able to check this number as of this week, and right now we're at about $23,206. So prior to you adopting your final budget, we will check these numbers again. So we just want you to be aware of the ADM. That is what we use for budgeting. Now, on the other side, in terms of student enrollment, this is what Mr. Upperco uses in terms of planning for his CIP and facility building. And you will see for 2020, staff is projecting 24,009 students. So we wanted you to be aware of that. So now that takes you to slide 16. We've talked a little bit about the revenue side, and whenever you prepare a budget, you must make sure that your revenues and your expenses balance. So when you look at slide 16, the main takeaway here is that we want you to be able to see that when you include all funds, your instruction department or budget category does make up a lion's share of your budget at about 61%. The total budget again here is $350 million. Then if you go around the chart, you can see administration, you can see transportation, maintenance, food service, CIP, technology, and debt service. When you take a look at slide 17, we're now giving you a different presentation, and this is less CIP. So again, when you look at these numbers, you'll see that your instruction category as a percent of the budget does go up to 66%. And the total budget here, excluding CIP, is $321.4 million. And just one other way we want to slice the budget for you, if you look at the budget, less CIP and debt service, you'll basically see a total of $293.6. And you can see here your instruction budget category is now 73% of your entire budget. So let's take a look at some of the numbers that you see here on slide 19. When you look at the instruction budget, you'll basically see less CIP. We have recommended increases from the superintendent of about $15 million. And know that a lion's share of that, of course, is going to be your 5% increase because the majority of our employees are coded to instruction. You'll also see of the 149 positions, most of those are in the instruction area. When you look at administration, basically you're looking at not just administration, but also your nurses. You're looking at your psychologists. You see an increase there of $590,000. That is the pay raise increase and small increases in your non-compensation. When you look at transportation and fleet, you see an increase of $1.3 million. Now, keep in mind for transportation, that is not only just the 5% increase in pay, but also many of our bus drivers and our bus aides are also entitled to year 2 of the Evergreen compensation study. Then if you look at maintenance, you'll see that going up about $959,000. A lion's share of that is custodial supplies, with us bringing that in-house, as well as their 5% increase. Food services, when you look at food services, we are going to be recommending that we use a portion of our fund balance. Right now, the fund balance is $4 million, and we're going to use about $1.3 million of that. Now, technology, you see an increase of $1.6 million. This is the pay raise, but also recall with the school-based allocations. That increase that we're giving to schools, many of the schools are using that in the area of technology. Also, you will see in the technology line, we have here Lexia, that's going to be about $285,000, as well as PowerSchool, and that's about a $250,000. So that is basically why that particular number is increasing. In time past, prior to the VDOE requirement, those particular items would have been in instruction, but because of the coding, we're required to put that in technology. And then you'll see a debt service increase of $800,000. So total there, you have $20.8 million. So now what this does, we want to kind of now walk you through the 3 goals that was presented by our superintendent. Goal number 1, attracting, retaining, and investing in high-quality teachers and staff. Goal number 2, increasing student learning and achievement. And goal number 3, supporting safe, engaging, and equitable learning environments. So that's going to bring you to slide number 21. So what we are attempting to do for you today is to basically break out the budget and share with you the fiscal impact. So when you look at the 5% pay increase, you know that number is about 9.1. Then also we have related investments, one specifically as it pertains to providing teachers with and staff with tuition reimbursement of about $500,000. You also have other pay increases, reclasses, cafeteria monitors. We're very pleased this evening to share with you that this particular program has been a success when we've talked to our elementary principals, and so much of a success that if they have more than 500 students, those particular schools will receive an additional elementary monitor if approved by the school board. Now, this particular funding will be coming from the food service program as well, because we have the fund balance. Next, you will see the student support investments of 149 positions. Later on in the presentation, we will have the instruction department. They're going to walk you through each one of these particular investments, and we're excited to share that every school, 29 schools and the 2 centers, every school will benefit from a position or more. Then we have investments in our non-compensation. That's about $3 million. And in this particular number, you will see we will have band uniforms for 2020, about $25,000. Also, we are increasing the band transportation allocation, $10,000 for every high school. In addition, the athletic transportation allocation is going up by $10,000. So in total, your high schools will now have a transportation allocation of $61,000 versus the normal $41,000. So we did want to point that out for you this evening. When you look at the next slide, which is slide 22, is basically a breakdown of all your compensation proposal. We are in year 2 of the Evergreen study, and we do have a detailed slide in a moment that we'll share with you. About 300 employees are benefiting. Also keep in mind that we do have some employees who were with us last year that are no longer with us. So of course they're not included in this analysis. If we also have employees who change jobs, for example, let's say if they went from a para to a bookkeeper, they were also eliminated also from the Evergreen study. We're proud to present to you this evening a 5% increase in academic and athletic stipends of $101,000. Based on the Evergreen study, they also indicated that this is an area that we should look at, so we're bringing that to you tonight for your consideration. Also, with the employee compensation focus group that Dr. Baker put in place about 4 years ago, that particular focus group is recommending that we look at a percent increase versus a flat dollar amount, because in actuality, it will give the coaches, both the academic side and the athletic side, more funding. Also, based on an analysis that HR has completed, and this was also recommended by the Employee Compensation Focus Group, a $10 increase in our sub rate. This should assist us with attracting more subs. This is something that came from the maintenance department, increasing the custodial hourly rate from $10 an hour to $11.50. This also should assist us with retention and recruitment. We're hopeful. And then also what we've heard from our principals was a recommendation to increase the teacher hourly rate, because the going rate for a tutor is about $40 an hour. So what we're doing, this is a phased approach, taking it from 25 to 30. This is going to impact your summer school teachers as well as those teachers who assist with after-school remediation. And then again, we just want to highlight for you again the tuition reimbursement. We are starting this year with carryover, and we have employees who are very excited about this, and we want to be able to continue this because this is additional monies that will be put back into our staff's pockets. The next one here basically is a breakout of the additional supplements and reclasses, just so you can see with the cafeteria monitors, that's about $77,000. You can see specifically the high school band transportation supplement. And because these are bus drivers that will be commuting our students, I did have to include FICA in this particular number. Also, we currently have a web curator stipend at our middle schools and our high schools. So that was phase 1. This is now phase 2, wanting to do the same thing for our 17 elementary schools and our 2 centers. High school clinical assistant, we're wanting to take them from 5 hours a day to 7.5, and we do have data to support this recommendation. And then supplemental pay increases, we have those, and I have a list in front of me of what that represents. And then also we have contract length changes and reclasses for a total of $501. Lastly, we wanted to share with you on the pay increases just so you can see what the trend has been. And when you look at these numbers from a teacher's perspective, that's on step 17 and above, over this particular period, they would have received an increase of about 19.5%. So as the school board, that is something that you should be very proud of. But also, there's still yet work to be done, especially at our starting salaries. And what we're recommending for 2020 is that our starting teacher salary be $44,000. In terms of the Evergreen study, we wanted you to be aware of the individuals who are being impacted. It's about 300 plus employees, and you can see here what their average increases will be. And this does include their 5% increase. So you vary anywhere from 7% up to 12%. And this investment is $552,000. This is year 2 of 3, and we'll have the final year next year being 2021. We wanted to also focus your attention on the Evergreen study. We also are implementing that for our teachers. We did take a hybrid approach based on consultation with Evergreen. So if you look at the 4% increase that was provided last year, looking to do the same thing for 2020, that's about $5 million. When you take into account the CPI, a 1% pay raise, that's about 1.25, for a total 5% for our teachers of $6.25 million. So that takes you next to just some information that I believe was asked last year. So just with an effort to be proactive, if you were wondering, what is the cost of a 1% salary increase for all employees? According to the slide that you have before you, it's $1.8 million. The cost of a 1% salary increase for teachers only, you'll basically see that's $1.25 million. A 1% salary increase for admin and staff only, $550,000, and then a 1% increase for administrators only. And by administrators, I mean the individuals who are paid on admin pay scales. That's about $100,000. So we just wanted to provide you with that additional level of detail. So what we're wanting to do for you on this particular slide, slide 28, the main takeaway from this, if you look at the first column, you'll basically see what our pay scales look like as of FY 2019. When you look at the next column, you'll see FY 2020. This is where the superintendent is recommending a starting salary of $44,000. Keep in mind, Stafford for this year is already at $44,075. And this is one of the school divisions that we compete with the most. And I'm pretty sure that they're looking also to provide an increase in 2020. But at least we're moving in the right direction. So when you look at this particular slide here, it's important for you to note, if you are step 0, your teacher this year, you're brand new, your salary is $42,314. And what we do whenever we don't provide a step, we back the scale up. So you have to look at it almost diagonal. For step one, for a brand new teacher next year, they'll be at $44,430, and that is a 5% pay raise. When you look at the next column, it says amount increase over step. If the school board wanted to do a step instead of a COLA, you'll basically see when you look at the progression in between steps, it varies anywhere from 2% to 0.8%, 0.5%, and it goes all the way down to lower levels. So what we want you to take away here is that it's more advantageous to provide our staff with a salary increase percent versus a step, because our steps are not even across the board. However, with the Employee Compensation Focus Group, Dr. Baker has asked us to work with the committee next year, and that's one of the things we're going to do. We're going to start off with the evergreen pay scales, and we're going to be looking to implement those in 2021, and we're going to bring that group together with additional teachers and staff to get feedback. So we will address this for 2021. When you look at slide number 29, we just wanted to illustrate for you, for a teacher that was hired in 2014 versus 2010 versus 2005, over this particular period, they're seeing an increase of 19%, and depending upon where they are on the scale, it could be 21%. So again, every year you've been very purposeful and intentional about making sure that the staff are receiving pay increases. So we wanted you to be aware of the work that you have been able to do. Now, the purpose of this particular slide is just to provide you with another illustration. For FY19, you did choose to give a 4% to all staff in terms of your teachers and your staff, a 4%. But if you had taken the route of a step, you can basically see how there is not a steady and equitable increase across all steps because of the progression that we will be addressing for 2021. So that's just a visual that we wanted you to see. So now this takes us to a recommendation coming from the Employee Compensation Focus Group. Again, with the sub-teachers, this is something that the school board has looked at for the last 6 years. And of those 6 years, you made changes for 2016, 2018, 2019. And this year, we are proposing a $10 increase. And you'll see more why in a little bit. Now, when you look at this particular slide, we're basically trying to share with you how do we compare with other school divisions. And again, one of our main competitors will be Stafford as a local school district. And with us increasing it up to $10, you can see we will surpass Stafford. And again, please know that they're working on their budget for 2020, and it is probable that they're looking to increase as well. But at a minimum, we want to be very close and be very comparable. And of course, we want to be competitive. So we wanted you to see that particular piece of information. Here, this is just the same analysis in terms of long-term substitute teachers. Again, by increasing this allows us to be more competitive with Stafford and other school divisions. So again, we do believe that we have the rationale to support this recommendation on this evening. So what this does for you, for 2020, we're recommending that the non-degree sub-teacher rate will be $85. Currently, it is $75. Degree substitute will be $100. It's currently $90. Long-term non-endorsed substitute teacher will go up to $140 from $130. Long-term endorsed substitute teacher will go up to $190 from $180. And the total cost of this investment is $229,000. The next area we wanted to present to you this evening are our stipends. And keep in mind, this is for both our academic as well as our athletic. Again, this is an area that you focused on the last several years. Last year, we were very optimistic that we were able to restore back to the 2009 levels. So that's basically letting you know that there's quite a bit more work to do. But as a good faith effort, we're recommending a 5% increase. And the focus group also will look at this particular area. We want to begin to look at a different structure whereby it could be a percent increase, but it also could be based on the years of experience that those particular coaches have. But again, this is a starting point. The amount of this investment is $101,000. When you look here, we just wanted to highlight for you what the non-compensation increases have been. Now, we do want you to be aware of the fact that later on in the presentation, the non-comp requests actually were cut in half. But when you look at instruction, you see the increase here of $477,000. This is primarily your tuition reimbursement, which is about $500,000. When you look at administration, this particular amount deals with maintenance contracts for HR, professional improvement, unemployment compensation insurance, and employee recognition. When you look at attendance and health, this deals with our nurses in terms of medical equipment for our students, as well as a medical system that we need to upgrade because our current system is no longer being provided for in terms of services. When you look at transportation, you will see an increase here of $347,000. $38,000 is bus repairs because the fleet department is recommending a rate increase across all categories. Gasoline is going up by $273,000. And then purchase services for our new GPS system, we are seeing an increase there of about $35,000. The maintenance department, that $318,000, that represents a vehicle repair increase of about $2,000, utilities of about $23,000, and then custodial supplies of about $290,000. We spoke a little earlier about technology, instructional technology, $285,000 for Lexia, $250,000 for Power School, $320,000 for school-based allocations, and $270,000 for technology maintenance contracts. And then, of course, you're already familiar with your debt service going up about $800,000 to support your CIP plan. And at this time, I will pause, and then we'll turn it over to Mrs. Colbert.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines, for your presentation. At this time, the chair would entertain any questions that board members have for Ms. Gaines. Dr. Meyer.
Ms. Gaines, on slide 9, were you talking about the local transfer? Does like the first number, 60.66%, and FY 2019 is 47.82. That includes debt service?
Yes, it does. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Because originally it did. I didn't know if the comparison is the same all the way down. Thank you. Debt service, yes.
That was the only question you had, Dr. Meyer?
I'm still looking, but
Okay.
I'll pass to let others take a chance.
Okay,
Take their
well, you'll-
opportunity.
Ms. Grant.
I just want to clarify that the governor's recommended 5% is for all FTE positions or just teachers?
Yes, so what that represents, Ms.
Or
Crane.
SOQ, sorry.
Yes, SOQ, standards of quality. But when you look at your standards of quality, that does represent instructional positions as well as support positions.
Right,
Mhm.
okay. It is
Yes.
recommended for all the SOQ positions.
That is correct.
Any other questions? Mr. Twigg.
Slide 11, back to the 5%. Did you reference that we can participate that with the present tense budget, or is that all future?
So when you look at the 5%, based on our discussions with VDOE, they have indicated that this 5%, Mr. Twigg, it covers the 19 budget and it covers the 20 budget. So in essence, because the school division did provide a 4% for teachers and support staff in 19, that does go towards the 5%. Then for your administrators, where you provided a 2%, that does go towards their 5% because they're also a SOQ funded position.
And where is that accounted for in this budget cycle of 350 mils?
Can you repeat that?
Where is that accounted for in our $350 million proposed budget?
So where you see this accounted for, Mr. Twigg, it's going to be the $9.1 million for the 5% for
Or the
all
9
staff.
mils?
And then
Okay.
of that amount, it's important to note that $4.6 million is coming from the locality, from the state, and they've indicated that there is a required local match.
Okay, and is that only for, is that a 2-year window, or is it a X-year window?
It's a 2-year window, which is 19 and 20.
Thank you. Also, on page 16, your projected expenditures, all funds, 61%, put into instruction. What was that comparative number over the past 3 or so years off the top of your head?
Off the top, it's been about the same. We've always been in the 60% range, but it's important to know that when you take out CIP and debt service, that number does go to 70%. So it's almost about the same.
Okay.
Mhm.
And page 10, slide 19, $14 million for instruction. You made some references. Is any of this directed toward what we would all understand as new programs, or is it just pretty much the details that you provided?
It's the details that we have provided. You've already know that we've expanded the pilot activity bus program, so it's just primarily the programs that we currently have in place.
Check.
But it's important to note that the school counselors are included in there, and that is a new requirement coming from the state over a 3-year period. And there is a local match requirement to that as well, and that
Okay.
is new.
Thank you. I noticed 1.3 mils headed towards transportation fleet. I guess Mr. Uppico can address that in a few minutes. When you listed the subject items that would be affected by that increase, I don't recall hearing anything about personnel and plans on expanding and restructuring and perhaps even putting more people out in the field and at higher rates. I'd like for that to be addressed at some point this evening, probably not you, doesn't have to be
It's
now.
in the presentation, Mr. Twig. We're just pausing now to move to the next segment, but when we get to the next part of the presentation,
Okay.
we're going to give you an
Covered. Thank you.
itemization by every budget
Okay,
category.
appreciate that. And then, all right. The slide 23, line item 2, high school band transport supplement. You did explain that somewhat. I would urge, as I did the other night, that we have to not just throw money at our high schools and say we did something. I am aware that our students have an average, when they jump into band, of a $400 out of pocket. We also have the elementary and the middle school levels, that whereas it takes hundreds and even several $1,000s to provide instruments and services to the students so that they can effectively participate in at a reasonable cost. So I'm asking again, and will continue to ask, that we restructure that before we finalize this budget over the next 2 weeks to incorporate some pittance of hundreds and several $1,000s to those other schools as we progress with this, to include and emphasize, of course, our band buses, because that's a large chunk of a cost. I'd hate to think that we could just just throw money at the buses and say, oh, we serve the music program. Also, the slide 27, cost of 1% salary increase for employees, teachers, admin, et cetera. Does this correlate directly with cost? In other words, if everything goes up to 5%, we multiply?
Yes, because I'm
Okay.
giving you the percent. For 1%, you can multiply that times
So in
5.
theory, if okay, cost. Okay, that's all I have on that. Forget the theory. And, okay, next slide, 28. $44,000 starting salary, up, $1,500, give or take. Where is that factored into the this year's budget?
It's included in the compensation proposal.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's good. And then from toward the end of your presentation, the last 10 slides or so talked about how we were upping salaries for stipends and subs, et cetera. Does that have a specific home in our budget as a line item or an added line item, or can you identify where that is coming from, please?
Yes, we do have a specific line that's called substitute pay, and we also have another line called supplemental pay that we include in our stipends. So that's also a part of the compensation proposal
So
that you see.
everything here, seen here over several slides is under supplemental.
In terms of the
And
stipends.
what's that number, or do you know off the top of your head?
The stipends?
The supplemental package cost.
That's $266,000.
266.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Twigg. Anyone else? Go ahead, Dr. Baker.
If that's working. Yeah, I just needed to make sure because I don't want to miss something that I think was, and maybe Mr. Twigg, you're going to come back to it at the end, but you said that you wanted the staff to understand your desire to see funds restructured. I'm just trying to remember the language that you used for music. So I want to make sure that I understand what you're meaning so that they can consider that as well as the rest of the board. So you are suggesting that more funds need to be provided supplemental to the music and middle school programs apart from the supplement that is being recommended for high school. If you could provide some clarity on what type of funding you are recommending, the amounts,
Sure.
and for what, because there are funds obviously that are allocated for elementary and middle. But
Right.
you mentioned buses, and I wanted to understand what you were referring to when it came to buses, if you were recommending that we develop after-school programs for music. Some counties have early band programs that begin in the elementary school. If you were recommending that we go in that direction, because otherwise I wasn't sure what you were referring to when it came to the transportation. And you can wait till later, but I want the staff to know what you mean in terms of both dollars and restructuring of those funds.
Dr. Baker, he says he can follow up now. Let's go ahead and take care of that.
Thank you. It's not referring to the point you just made, whereas we provide after-school programs. It's not, I don't mean to imply that. Just speaking of transportation costs for high school music programs, i.e. band mostly, some choral. And then back to the earlier point, whatever lump sum is you projected and we review for music program enhancement, I'm suggesting that we just don't throw it at a bus cost stipend for high schoolers. I'm recommending that we throw a couple of $1,000, several thousand, maybe upwards of $5,000 to of that cost, of that lump sum, to the elementary and middle school choruses and bands. Because I'd obtained information, and they can use a couple $100 for the middle school choruses, and middle school bands need to buy instruments on a continuous basis, and they're always struggling and always behind. Well, if we're going to, say, put $20,000 into the investment, let's take the first 5 or 7 and throw it into those lower education programs, because that would be an enhancement that will in effect allow us to recruit students at a younger age. It'll give people incentives, our teachers at the younger levels, and in turn help the school spirits. If we can enhance music by putting more students in the program, and you can do that if you put some flair to it, if you demonstrate that you want to invest in that as a leader, not you individually, I mean us. So I think there's several benefits to us not ignoring with just a few simple $1,000 out of $350 million to put into the grade school and middle school level. Thank you, if that answers your question.
And so, again, we can do this at a later time so that we can move on, but two things that I've heard. First, I think you'd find most of us are all about the flare and all about wanting to put
Yeah,
more
we're good
funds
with that.
into
We do well
the
with
the
it.
additional programs. But I do want to make sure I'm hearing, so that when we have the discussion later, you're saying that of the $75,000 that right now is a part of supplemental support for high school band, that 5,000 of that should be pulled from what we're recommending or added on top of that to support earlier music education.
Generally speaking, yes.
So
And,
add on
somebody
top of
come
the
up-
5,000 that would probably provide a $200 additional supplement for elementary and middle.
Yeah.
That's what you're recommending.
Yes.
For consideration.
In generality, we'll let your staff come up with the numbers, and we will
Right.
concur. But,
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And later, I think, Ms. Braswell, Mr. Wolf could maybe articulate how that number, I know Mr. Twiggs just kind of using as a phrase, throw money at, but I think that it was carefully conceived in terms of not just the amount, but maybe how it could be rotated and utilized as an initial investment, but maybe something that could be built upon over time. So if we have an opportunity, at least before the night's over, I'd like him to have the opportunity to explain how that was put together.
Certainly, Dr. Baker.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
Thank you, everybody.
Ms. Phelps?
I have a couple questions. On the governor's proposal, I wrote down here that it's, in order for the support positions, so am I hearing this correctly? It's 4.6 million that we would have to match in order to receive his support positions that are in his proposal. Am I correct?
The state is actually providing $4.6 million of the total cost, which is 9.1 for Spotsylvania. And when you look at the ratio between state and locality, it's normally about 55 to 45%, depending upon your composite index. So they're providing 4.6. In order to make it whole from the locality, we do need to make up that difference.
Okay.
So that's almost another, 4.6 million.
Do you know our composite index?
Yes, it's 0.3627.
0.3.
627.
27.
Mhm.
So is that like 32 cents?
No,
$100.
it's other
34.
formulas. It's like a three-formula equation.
I mean, 66 cents, sorry. Yeah, okay. I had it 0.34
Yes.
down in the ADM as a 0.34 on my research that I've been doing.
Sure.
And it comes out to about 66 cents. So ours is a little lower than that.
And
Okay.
over the last few
I got you.
years, it has continued to increase. And so when the composite index goes up, there's an expectation that the locality has a greater ability to pay, so therefore their share should also increase.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. And so the counselors that are mentioned in here, the 36 million to start increasing, you said that was over 3 years. So is that going to be 12, 12, and 12?
Yes,
Year
it
over
would
year?
be. Yes, ma'am.
12 per year?
Correct.
For 3 years?
But for this particular year, this 36 million is what he's putting in the biennium for 2020. When he goes to do his budget for the next biennium, there'll be another 36 million, whatever that amount is, to initially bring it to, for every 250 students we have, we will have to have one counselor, and that has to go into effect by 2022. So if we are to receive this particular amount of funds, which is in our basic aid, we are required to meet the ratio.
And that would be 2022?
Correct, but they're going to do it over a 3-year period. So for us, for 2020, it would basically be about 16 positions for us. In this budget, you have 14 because we have 2 positions that we can use. And then when you look at the next year allocation, when they give us that ratio, we'll run those numbers and we'll bring that back to you. But for 2021, it's 16 positions. And right now, we have 14 plus another 2. So we're willing to meet that ratio.
Okay. And,
And there is a local match component to that as well.
right, that's what I
Yes,
was just going
yes,
to
yes.
ask. Okay, so there is.
Yes, ma'am.
And so the preschool initiative is probably a question for
Carol.
Mrs. Fillinard. Did we pilot, we did a pilot on that program, am I correct? Before we implemented it, the VPI?
We've had
Was there-
VPI for a number of years.
Right.
So it,
When did it start? Do you know what year?
before my time up in,
Okay.
in central office, so it's been a little bit.
Okay. And page 7, well, I did the pages, and let me go to the slide on the page. Slide 14, the student enrollment, 19 minus, is that 222 for the actual?
Yes, ma'am. So when you compare FY19, based on what we had projected and based on the count as of October 1st, we basically did not have, we were short 222 students.
So we projected 222 more.
We did, yes.
Okay.
We were basically, if you look at the year before, you'll see that we actually had 102 more come in. So based on our forecast model, it appeared as if we had broke a trend and we were starting to see increases. So it's based on prior year trends.
Okay.
So now we'll revise again.
And on page, 11, we already went over that. Lapse in turnover dollars, can you,
Yes, so lapse and turnover dollars, basically what you're looking at, when the school board adopted its budget back in April, that time period, there were individuals through the HR process who had retired, and when we hired those new individuals, their pay, they were paid on a lower scale, of course, based on experience. So lapse funding normally can range anywhere between 1.5 up to 2 million, depending upon that new pool of teachers that come in. And that's primarily where you have your lapse funding. It's
Right.
in your teaching area.
do you know the number, I remember it coming up before us, the number on the lapse in turnover from last year? the
Last year,
actual?
it was about 1 million from last year.
Is that what you're projecting
I'm
this
looking at
year?
about 1.5, max 2. But again, that fluctuates because as people leave, they could be replaced by someone higher. When individuals resign, it may be an individual that did not have insurance, and now the new replacement is getting insurance. There's so many variables, Ms. Phelps.
Right, because I know we had that come back, and I went,
Right.
whoa. And I think I asked Michelle last year for the numbers, but I didn't get the dollar. And so I had the numbers, but the dollars making up the numbers is, and I guess it's page 14. Let me see what slide now. I guess it would be the various salary increase cost. I didn't notice, or maybe you can tell me where I can find it, for a 2% pay increase under, I think you tried to kind of get to what maybe we were thinking, or I was thinking, as far as a 1% pay increase, 2%, 3%, so on and so forth, for certain classifications. But I would like to see some information on the 5% for everybody under 100,000, or 2% for under 100,000, as far as teachers' compensation. So in other words, anybody who makes over 100,000, what do you have the numbers for how many positions are 100,000 or over within our schools?
I'll be happy to get that to you.
Are you see what I'm trying to get at? Because 5% on someone who makes $100,000 is what? Let's just say, hypothetically, somebody who makes $110,000,
Right.
5%, and then you give a teacher that makes $44,000, 5%. So that's where I'm going with that. I'm just
Right.
giving you
Sure,
what
sure.
my thinking is.
So that would be about 5,000. I guess the thing that I'm just trying to process is when you look at that, if you have individuals on a pay scale going anywhere from 50 to 150,000, how would you decide who's going to?
Well, I'm just saying, that's why I asked for 100,000 or more. The administration here that is making 100,000 or more, to give them a 5% pay increase versus a teacher or whoever, or a position under 100,000 is a substantial difference.
Sure.
So that's all, I'm just asking. And that's where I'm coming from. Because last year, I think it was, didn't it start off 4% across the board for everyone? And then we went to 4% across the board, and then 2% for admin. And usually the admin, their salaries are higher. Am I right?
Last year, it was 4% for teachers only.
Okay.
And then for support staff and admin, it was 2%.
2%.
And then we increased the support staff up to 4%, and admin remained at 2%.
2%.
Yes.
So that's the same kind of forecast or the
Sure.
path I was trying to come up with here. It's kind of the same thing we had last year. And also, so this page 16, substitute pay increase. I don't know what, hold on, 16. I wrote the pages down. So if we have a big pool of substitutes and we offer this, and I guess it would probably be an HR or Dr. Baker question to answer, would that increase the, entice more substitutes to show up when we need them? Because I know I've seen that we have a pretty big pool of substitutes. However, having them maybe show up and work. So do you think that doing this would entice that?
We absolutely hope so. And you do make a good point in terms of if we're able to provide more competitive rates. When you look at some of our subs, and we were very specific to compare Spotsylvania to other divisions that actually kind of touch us, some of our subs do sub in multiple counties. So if they have an opportunity to sub in Fredericksburg on a day versus coming to Spotsylvania, if you look at some of those rates, they may choose to go to the city of Fredericksburg because they do pay a higher rate. So we would hope that that would help contribute to us being able to more increase our fill rate on a daily basis, because we do have a number of subs that don't just sub for us. Okay?
And so my last question, then I'll give it back. Page 18, the stipends. I made unless I think it's 18 for the stipends. Oh, okay, yes. The stipends on page 18. So if there's a coach, I wrote down experience and performance driven for stipends. Is this experience and performance driven?
Not yet. So we will be working with the Employee Compensation Focus Group. HR and Michelle have already started to pull data. So this is just everyone across the board at 5%. But we are looking to move in that direction as a scenario for the school board to consider.
Right,
Based
so
on
you have
experience.
you have a coach who's been sweating and involved for the past 10 years, and you have another coach who comes in last month, and they both received the same stipend.
That's the way it's been for 30 years, but we are looking to make an adjustment, and it just takes time. It takes time. We have to do research. We want to work with other school districts to see what models they put in place, but that is something that the superintendent has asked the focus group to look at.
So if this stipend gets approved for the coaches, though, does it give them an incentive to stay or to?
I would say yes, because
Really?
last year, we brought the stipends back up to the 2009 levels, so at a minimum, 5% is something that we are recommending that the board consider. Also, we wanted to consider a percent, because you're looking to give potentially a 5% pay raise to all employees, so we were thinking for administrative purposes and processing purposes, let's also apply that same 5% to stipends.
Okay.
Because
That's
that's what
all
we
I-
do with hourly rates. If the pay raise goes up by a certain percent, we apply that same percent to hourly rates.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
Ms. Shelley, did you have questions?
I just want to say thank you to staff for bringing this. I know it's a lot of work, but thank you. Going back to the state budget, do we have, I know this is other extraneous data, but prior to 2008-9 with the recession, do we have an idea of what the state percentage increase was on an annual basis to school divisions?
We did go back and look at that data, at least for the last 3 or 4 years, the last 3 or 4 bienniums. So there was one biennium, it was 1.5%, another biennium, it was 2%. So when we looked at the governor budget, we were able to see that this 5% that's before you this evening is the highest that it's been in 15 years. And if you want us to go back that far, we can do that, but we looked at the last 6 to 7 years.
Okay. All right, so that's for teacher salaries, but I'm just thinking in whole. Because what I've seen by looking at the state's budget and how our budgets since 2009 to now, that our percent from the state, or our amount from the state of our state allocation we only in, I think it was the 18 budget was the first time we had been more than what we were pre-recession. So now for the only 3 years of the last over 10 years are we receiving more than we did, and sadly, in 2009. But when it comes to inflation, we are receiving reflationary dollars. I know it's still less. Why I'm asking this is that's why we have to ask more from our locality, is because of the amount of money that we're getting from the state. Was there, and I missed the data, at one point, our state was giving us more money than our localities, and then it went down, or it's kind of flip-flopped. It's been fairly even. So my concern is, and now we do get more from the state, but I'm sorry. I got so much going on right now with how I'm thinking this out. How do we go about getting, talking to the state and making sure that this allocation that has been proposed from the governor is what we actually get versus what we might get? Do we have any ideas of what's happening in the General Assembly right now based on this funding formula, or that from the governor's proposed budget? And have we heard anything from the General Assembly and what it looks like they are actually going to fund? I know that the House has, committee is saying that the 5% teacher raise, or SOQ raise, is going to be in the House budget. Have we heard anything from the Senate yet? And then I'm also wondering about the money for the other SOQ positions for our counselors. And now that there is a new state law where we have to limit the number of their numbers went down, our SOQ numbers went down. So I know that we have on our Dr. Baker's budget 24 general education teachers. Part of that is also because of the new law that went into effect, am I correct? Because we have classes, we need to make sure that our numbers are correct and we're not over pupil, so we don't have to pay our teachers even more of a stipend. Do you see where I'm going?
Right.
Can you explain that a little bit? I'm sorry.
Ms. Shelley, there were a lot of points that you just made, and a lot of thoughts. So I want to make sure that, just to kind of, in as concise a way as I can, we haven't even gotten to crossover yet with the General Assembly. I think that as we are following it, there is concern that there may not be support, and that's not unusual for the governor's budget as it has been presented. Maybe how some things are being allocated, particularly whether they can support a 5% pay increase as it has been proposed. But there's some other things in terms of how the revenue becomes available, and I know that you and other board members recently learned about that in terms of the quote-unquote windfall, and how the General Assembly is going to work through what it's going to turn out to be for this second year of the biennium. But I guess on the good news front, we are probably double the amount of state revenue that we received versus what we projected to receive in the second year of the biennium. So I think what we have to do right now is stay very attuned to the discussions that are happening in Richmond, and we, in every opportunity that we get, urge them, no matter what they do in terms of language or adjustments to the governor's budget, that it does not result in our receiving less money. We always want it to result in more, if not at least maintaining. You made a very good point about a recent change in the law as far as the number of students that a teacher can carry on their total class load. And with the change in that language, we, as well as other school divisions, are having to come up with a way to provide some additional compensation to teachers that go over 150. So you are correct that one consideration among many with the 24 additional teaching staff is to be able to help us in better balancing that, because master schedules are a complex beast, and so you can't always get to the exact number, but it will help us in being able to limit that, if not make it so that we don't have teachers that are either at 150 or 200 respectively per that new law, or the way that it is now being interpreted. So I wanted to say yes to that, and we're going to continue to try to do that. The other thing about reducing class sizes, so that maybe this will answer a question if it comes up later, to really reduce class size system-wide would require double to triple the amount of FTEs that we are requesting. So when we say to address class size, it's in a more targeted fashion where they are higher in spots, whether it's elementary, middle, or high. So I wanted to address that part in moving forward. Did that help? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and we have a quick question by Ms. Grant, please.
I just wanted to point out that job title doesn't have anything to do with doesn't have a big impact on your salary as much as education level and years of experience determines on where you fall on our scale. So, for instance, we have many director positions who are classified as admin that are making less than teachers. Then they didn't get a raise last year, the same as the teachers did, and they're still making less and nowhere near 100,000. So that's an arbitrary number that really doesn't correspond with the position, because we have numerous directors that don't make 100,000, and we have teachers that do. So I just wanted to make that clear, that I think that that's the distinction. That's not a target number that you always make. So,
Dr. Meyer.
A follow-up on lapse or turnover dollars becomes carryover, correct?
Well, when you're actually developing the budget, it becomes a part of the next budgeting process. So therefore,
Right.
we're able to benefit from that lapsed dollars and use that funding to help support some of the investments that was presented by Dr. Baker.
Okay. Question then on the stipends. Are the stipends a flat rate, or are you calculating stipends as a percent of salary?
Okay, so it is a flat rate right now. However, when we start the discussion with the task force, that is another option that we will be researching and
Okay.
exploring.
I just want to clarify what's in the budget. Thank you.
And I do want to mention too, you have a document before you that was prepared by Human Resources
Correct.
as it pertains to stipends.
Thank you.
Job well done, Michelle.
One follow-up with Ms. Phelps, go ahead.
I just have a follow-up. I forgot. I had these questions on before I got here, and I forgot to go over them, but what percentage of our division are SOQ's positions? Do you know?
It's not really a percent, because when you look at how they fund us, they don't fund us for all of our positions. For example, not all teaching positions are SOQ. And then when they do fund you, they fund you based on a prevailing rate. They don't fund you for the full amount of the salary that we're currently paying. But we can go back and look and see what that count is. When I looked at it before, I have a number, but I want to make sure I give you the accurate number.
Yeah, if you could get,
Sure.
I just want to see the numbers for myself. And the nurses, they're not SOQ positions.
They are SOQ positions.
Are they?
So when I
Okay.
talked to Kent Dickey with Video E, they are.
Okay.
They are.
So,
yes.
and are they RN or with a bachelor's, do you know? Are there,
Of our nurses, they are. Most of them are RNs.
okay. And so going back, can you just let me know the dollar or the cents for the composite index that we have? I'm just curious to see it. I know Stafford's is 0.34 and they were 66 cents. So I was just wondering if we're up to 0.3627, what that equates to dollars or cents, actually, I should
And I
say.
do have it here in the budget booklet. I'll let you know what page number it's on.
Okay, and as far as the $100,000 comment I was making, if you could, I mean, I would sit here and say that we don't have any employees $100,000 or more salary. So, I mean, if we do, if there's a number of employees that we have, if you could provide them to me. I don't need names or positions, but, you know, if it's an administrative assistant that makes 100,000 or more, how many do we have of those? Do you have any idea?
Okay, so what you're basically saying is you want me to run a listing of all employees who make over $100,000, regardless of the employee category, and give you a worksheet that says, of teachers, we have, let's say, 10 who make over 100,000. Administrators, 20. Is that what you're requesting?
Yeah, because it
Sure.
wouldn't be fair for me to sit up here and say a teacher who makes 100,000 or more won't get the 5%, like we did last year. Teachers got the 4%. So if teachers were making over 100,000 last year, then they got the 4%. Am I correct?
All teachers received the 4% last year. All
Okay.
support staff received the 4% last
I
year.
was trying to figure out to
Right.
separate it. That's it.
Sure.
There's nothing else behind it. I'm just,
Sure,
we're coming
sure.
down to money, funds,
Sure,
and that's
sure.
all I'm doing is looking at numbers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and then also in terms of the composite index, it is 0.3627.
Let me add to this. This is a opportunity for board members to obtain information. We're not going to engage in debate. Just gather the information that they need to make a decision. We'll have plenty of time to debate later. Ms. Gaines, I want to thank you for a great presentation. If you were a football player, you'd be a quarterback. You're always cool in the pocket, and you handle the blitz very well. Just want to let you know that. Very good job. And I don't have any questions at this time. We're going to move on to 3.03, Future Educators Academy Overview. Sounds very scrumptious. Ms. Colbert, please entreat us.
Mr. Braswell, if I may, I do want to, I want to introduce Ms. Colbert, as you know, but also Dr. Melanie K. Wyatt, who's our Assistant Director, are going to be presenting the information on the Future Educators Academy. And before I do, so that, again, we don't have to stop later, last year, the same request that Ms. Phelps was making was made. I recall 2 large packets that, and it may have been Mr. Twigg that requested it, but it was all admin employees and all of their salaries. And I know that was requested last year, and I think it was provided in hard copy form to each of the board members. And I'm recalling last year, but if it was 2 years ago, we can talk about it later, but there may have already been that produced, so we may even have it just to update it. But the other thing that you may want to do is, I think part of this is, if you were to, and again, we have to, per the match with SOQ positions, to provide at least what they're requesting at the state. But if you were not to give any pay increases to anyone in our school system over $100,000 or more, what would be the savings in that? I mean, we've talked about what it costs to give certain admin or all admin employees a certain raise, which you have illustrated on the slide, but so how much does that save our total school division if they never get a raise or a pay increase? I think it would be good to have that number, because then it kind of shows total, is there a savings in that? And so I'm so excited about the presentation that Ms. Colbert, soon to be Dr. Colbert, and Dr. Melanie K. Wyatt, part of what was shared with you back in November regarding a vision, a concept for providing stronger, more relevant career and college pathways for students. We have one tonight that our folks are going to share with you. They've done some great work. They have some really strong partners, and we're real excited about that. And I'm going to turn it over to Michelle to share with you.
If we could have the computer up again, please. To Chairman Braswell and the members of the board, Dr. Baker, Dr. Martin, to my esteemed colleagues, good evening. The availability of teachers in critical shortage areas and hard-to-staff schools continue to be a major challenge in the nation as well as in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The literature in this area suggests that while 2 million teachers may be needed nationally over the next 10 years, traditional teacher preparation programs have only 1 million prospective teachers in the pipeline. The school division, in partnership with University of Mary Washington and Shenandoah University, are pursuing an innovative long-range plan to address the teacher shortage affecting our schools. So we would like to acknowledge Dr. Pete Kelly, who's the Dean of the School of Education, and his team who've been actively involved in our planning, as well as Mr. Denny Keffer, who's in our audience from Shenandoah University, who is going to be an amazing partner to work alongside us as we move forward. Each of the partners have been intimately involved in the planning process for the Spotsylvania Future Educators Academy, and in working with our schools, our student teachers, as well for the past several years. When we look at our presentation for today, we are going to review just briefly state and local data trends, an overview of our program itself, as well as our university partnership and next steps for launching the program. This slide here shows a recent study conducted by UVA that in the past 10 years, student populations in the Commonwealth of Virginia grew to 6.5%, while the increase in new teachers entering the profession over the same period of time only grew by 0.9%. Further, the study revealed that 5.6% of teachers exited the profession during the recession between 2008 and 2012. So this chart shows the number of first-time teachers entering the profession in Virginia over more than a 10-year period. So you can see where there is that decline when the recession hit, and then there was a slow progression. But as we are now, there still continues to be a challenge with even reaching those numbers of first-year cohort teachers at pre-recession times. When we look at our attrition data here in Spotsylvania, we are fairly consistent. However, our goal is always to increase our retention rate while attracting and recruiting new teachers in the division. As part of this recruitment plan, we will be offering the Future Teachers Academy in the fall to rising high school juniors and seniors who may be interested in the career of education. One of the things that we're excited about is we're hoping that the learning opportunities will spark that interest in whether they do want to pursue a career in education, or maybe to help them determine early on that maybe that's not the path that they want to take, and so that we can continue to support them and prepare them for that transition post-high school. Ultimately, our goal is to address the shortage areas through growing our own teachers as well as support staff. So at this time, I will turn the presentation over to Dr. K. Wyatt, and she will provide more details about the program itself and the criteria and the partnership that's associated with it.
Good evening, everyone. It's exciting to present to you such a wonderful program for our students. Our goal is for the Educators Academy to attract juniors and seniors to the field of education through exposure to a world-class curriculum and hands-on experience that focuses on quality teaching. Our students for this program are called Teacher Cadets, and they will be enrolled in our Virginia Teachers for Tomorrow course. Our teacher cadets who will return after college may return to Spotsylvania County Public Schools to serve in a variety of capacities for us. And now for a quick overview. Our Teachers for Tomorrow course, we hope will spark interest, like Ms. Colbert was just sharing with you, and hopefully they'll have an understanding and appreciation for the teaching profession. Most exciting about this program is the option for the dual enrollment. The dual enrollment will allow these students or teacher cadets to be enrolled in high school courses receiving high school credits as well as receiving 4 college credits at the same time. These teacher cadets who successfully complete the course will have a foundation in teaching, learning the history of teaching and the teaching pedagogy, governance, and best practices. In addition to the training and nurturing that I just spoke of, this course will also allow them to explore other related education professions. The Educator Academy also supports the efforts of our school division to meet our hiring targets and addressing the teacher shortage by cultivating an effective growing our own program. The criteria for our program is very simple. It's open to juniors and seniors throughout our school district that have a minimum GPA of 2.7. They will complete an application this spring along with some teacher recommendations. And in the fall, once they're in the program, at that time they will complete their dual enrollment form with Shenandoah University. We have selected a wonderful campus, and that's the Chancellor High School campus, where our students will be attending courses. And once they're ready to go out and work with students, we love the setup for Chancellor High School because they can walk over to Chancellor Middle School and work with students, or work with students at Harrison Road Elementary School. Ms. Colbert mentioned our partnerships. The University of Mary Washington will support us in building teacher pipeline and curriculum extension activities. And of course, Shenandoah University will support our teacher cadet programming and the dual enrollment course. Because of the collaboration of these partners, we are excited to offer meaningful hands-on learning. In the first semester, our teacher cadets, or our students, will participate in project-based instruction as well as observations. During their second semester, of course, they'll get to go out and work with our students, is what we called our field experience. And throughout the school year, they will have the opportunity to have an independent study where they will build their professional portfolio. In addition to these learning benefits mentioned already, this is a very robust and involved program. However, tonight we are just presenting a very small snapshot of the curriculum which these teacher cadets will be engaged in. The benefits of this program is not just for the cadets enrolled in this program, but there is the additional benefit of support to the classrooms at the middle and elementary levels. It has an added bonus, of course, of our cadets mentoring our younger students also. This program prepares our students not only with quality and engaging curriculum, but it will also prepare them for the employment and hiring process. In addition, it also supports our profile of a graduate, and I know we've spoken to that at many of our board meetings, with career exploration, workplace skills, and community. There are many benefits to this program, as you can tell. The teacher cadets will experience learning as individuals and as productive citizens as they explore new educational concepts and ideas. The teacher cadets will experience the education profession as they are guided through the history of education, the functions of school, and the functions of school divisions. Of most benefit to the cadets, of course, is the opportunity to work in and experience real-life classrooms as they collaborate with highly qualified teachers within our division in the spring. So as you can see, there are a number of the benefits also listed up there that I won't highlight, that I will allow you to read. The next page is very exciting for us because it demonstrates all of the careers and education pathways that our students can take after they have completed this program. As you're already aware, we do offer the early childhood program. However, the Educators Academy offers more opportunities for future employment. So you see up here, there's a lot. I'm not going to read them all, so don't worry. But there are many degree options and career paths that would greatly support our community and ultimately support our schools. Everything from a classroom teacher, paraprofessional, to an instructional assistant. I know it's pretty small up there, but it shows all of the degree options as well as employment options for our students. So why are teacher cadet and teacher recruitment programs needed? It will help us create a qualified pool of applicants, increase the diversity of our applicant pool, and gain real-world experience for our students. It will also promote the hiring of local candidates. How could it be any more exciting than to see our students return to our school sites, our classrooms, to work with our community? A few highlights of this program include that students may participate in the Educators Rising Club, which is an opportunity for them to also participate in an annual conference and competition. Ultimately, we would like to bring the club down to the middle school level and include students in 8th, 9th, and 10th grade. The Educators Rising cultivates highly skilled educators by guiding our cadets on a pathway to becoming accomplished teachers. And I think what's going to be most exciting for our community is also our signing ceremony. Our signing ceremony, of course, will be with Spotsylvania County Schools and our community and our board members, of course, in conjunction with Shenandoah University, where we bring everyone together at the completion of the program to have them sit and actually sign a letter of intent with their hopes to return to us to be in our classrooms. They will also receive graduation cords for their ceremonies. And unlike AP courses that require you to take a test to earn college credits, this will be college credits at the successful completion of the course. How exciting is that for our students? We will also look to support our students who wish to take the praxis, which is the first route to teacher licensure, as well as those students who want to take the para-pro test to come back to be paraprofessionals in our school division. And we are very excited about this because it builds quality teachers for our classroom. This program is a must for Spotsylvania County Public Schools to remain competitive. As you can see, those are just a few of the divisions that are currently offering the Virginia Teach for Tomorrow course. And to remain competitive, this program is really going to help us out and remain competitive by having a lot of our own students come back and work in our schools. Currently, there are 360 students in the state of Virginia who are working through the Shenandoah program to receive college credits. So we would like to be a part of that special number. And our next step is just supporting students through their course selection. Of course, we will have a teacher selection process to make sure we have the right fit, and this is going to be an exciting program for the teacher, of course, to engage with her colleagues as well as her students. Our teacher will be involved in a 2-day training of the curriculum that will provide her an online hub of resources that would make our students successful. Thank you, and I believe at this point, if there's any questions about the program.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Colbert and Dr. Wyatt. Appreciate that. Do we have any questions from the board? Mr. Blaine.
This makes me very excited. I am absolutely impressed. The teachers are the people that deliver everything else. They're the crucial person in the education of boys and girls, and this is just exciting to see what you've laid out here and putting it into a construct that is going to pay off. And the teachers that we identify, well, the people that we identify as teachers are going to play a crucial role in educating our kids for the next 20, 30 years. So my compliments of all the things you've done, and it looks to me like you've covered most of the exigencies that can come up, and maybe we'll think of the others later, but my compliments to the whole administrative staff and the leadership you've provided here.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine. Mr. Twigg.
And how old is this program, or perhaps you've said?
How old is the Virginia Teachers for Tomorrow program?
How old is it in Spotsylvania?
This will be returning to Spotsylvania. It was here some years ago in a different format. Since then, the course has changed in about 2012 with their coursework, but prior to that, it was called the Teachers for Tomorrow program, and that's when it was here in Spotsylvania. In 2012, the program did change to become the Virginia Teach for Tomorrow's program, which has a different curriculum and a different pathway, since our licensure pathways have changed.
Check, thank you. And then, did or would we vote on this, or would we approve this by making it a budget line item, that simply?
We have, there is at least one resource that's we're requesting in this budget. If it's not funded, we're still going to do it. So we do intend to move forward if I have to go and teach it. But we are going to move forward because we're going to have students registering. I think the only other cost that we need to work out, and we obviously want to shift funds and not just have to add on top, but would be
Right.
some transportation for students who are not at the Chancellor High School. But this will be our first year, and so certainly after the first year, we can adjust. But we did want the board's support. We did want the board's endorsement
Sure.
of it,
You'll have that.
and any feedback that you want to provide is certainly
Yeah.
welcome.
And then, how many students do we have lined up eager to chase this, or do we,
Well,
are we waiting on data, or do we have enough already?
since it's a new program, the students are currently registering 4 courses at this time. So
Wow.
we
How
are,
how many, please?
we don't have that number. They're still registering.
Okay, and will this be offered at each school?
No, only at Chancellor High School.
Okay, I have
And
a
it-
problem with that, but we'll deal with that on another
Okay.
day.
It's offered for students throughout the district. Yes, Chancellor High School is just the site for it.
Then I don't have a problem with that.
I'm sorry if I didn't convey that clearly.
Spotsylvania High School students are welcome to register.
All high school students are
Correct.
welcome, and encouraged, strongly encouraged, so that we can get some.
Agricultural Teachers of America coming from Spotsylvania High School. Okay, thank you very much for the quality presentation. Very exciting to hear this, what you're telling us that we can integrate on our own, for our own. And I think it sounds, it apparently sounds like it's going to be a quality effort at zero cost, or, negligible one. And we have excellent staff, starting with you folks right there, that can, across the table here, that can help us lead this change that could have a dynamic impact over 5, 6, 7 years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Twigg. We're going to have Ms. Gramp and then I believe Dr. Meyer.
I just quickly wanted to say that as this is the couple, I've known about the program for a while, and I think that's wonderful that we're bringing it back in existence here in Spotsylvania, and I think that you'll be surprised with how many people actually are on it, and we'll need to expand the program in the future. But I also wanted to point out for the public clarification that curriculum isn't determined by the school board, so we would never vote on something like this, and we have no say on something like this. So, but we do have funding accesses, so I'm happy that this is a cheap program that we're going to be starting, and that when we go to expand it, because it's going to have a waiting list, I'm sure, then we'll just have to make it bigger.
Dr. Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a timeline, when do you anticipate having an idea of how the volume that we could, the interest that would be there? Because your course catalogs just went out, or I saw it posted online.
Right. I would say at least in another month, we probably have some genuine data that we could provide you with. But, with the understanding that as new kids move in, if there is opportunity and space, of course, we would encourage them to participate as well.
And just comment, I'm glad that we are really proceeding with this initiative because I think it will pay off dividends. Appreciate the site that you've chosen because you do have the elementary and middle, within walking distance of one another, within the same envelope. It makes a lot of sense to locate make that be the site, and that others can come to that. So kudos, good thinking, and I'm really looking forward to being a very, very good choice for us to begin this process of opening up pathways for our students that we're growing our own. Good, well thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Ms. Shelley.
The teacher on the board wants to talk about this. I love it. There's a whole lot about it that I love. The saying, when you mentioned that the students would be going to Chancellor Middle and Harrison Road to support the other teachers, but as mentors for the students, that's the piece that grabbed me. They're going to be mentoring other children, other students, and I love that piece. Because there's kind of an audition type, and I shouldn't use that word because they're not trying out, but they have to have recommendations. They have to have certain grade point average, and they have to have recommendations for their teachers. So we know these are going to be good students and good kids to be in this program, and I like that piece. So they would be awesome mentors. But as a teacher, I like it too because instead of just going to college and saying, I want to be a teacher, they're going to get that hands-on experience, and there may be students that say, oh, heck no, this is hard. And we may have some of them. But then we also will have hopefully way more saying, this is really what I want to do. And so I like that a lot. I appreciate the partnership with Shenandoah and with Mary Wash, because I think building those partnerships with our post-secondary schools is huge, and it's going to help bring probably more programs that from the colleges to Spotsylvania, because they see that we want to work with them. And then I got two more things I wanted to mention. With the students maybe graduating and then taking the para-pro test, there could be students who are in college and maybe taking part-time classes, or maybe they're online classes, but that we could have college students who are going into education, but they're paras, because they've already found that out, that that's something they want to do. So they're working their way through college as a para. I think that's awesome, because they're already see, and they're already kind of learn what the job entails. But then I'm also wondering, this is a question, would we be able to reach out to our partners, and if they see some very outstanding students, would there be scholarship opportunities from those colleges for our kids? And that's something that I would like to pursue with those partnerships, and then because I think that would be another way to support our students if they are gonna go to Shenandoah or going to go to the University of Mary Washington. Who are our partners that maybe those two schools would offer some kind of tuition support for our graduates?
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. And to your point, some of our preliminary conversation in working through the partnership is looking at, are there opportunities to, for example, waive an admission fee or that kind of thing. So we're very much so in the infancy of those conversations, but thinking along the same line of how do we continue to help grow that pool for our college and university partners in terms of student enrollment as well. So if we can help nurture our high school students and help direct them to certain schools, then that may be an opportunity for them to be able to provide some waivering of a fee or some funding to help support that. So thank you for that.
Okay, we'll have Dr. Meyer and then Ms. Phelps.
I just had a thought that crossed my mind. Some, like Riverbend, may have students who provide tutoring and mentoring at Chancellor Elementary, or Cortland High provides some of their upper high school students provide mentoring and tutoring at Cortland Elementary. Does that in any way fit into the scheme of field experience, or?
Well, based on their student schedules, that's something we can look at, but right now it has to be a structured field experience under direction of this trained teacher for them to actually earn the dual enrollment credit at this time. But I'm sure there would possibly, we can work with staff to do some volunteer opportunities maybe after school, because I'm sure those elementary schools would be in support of additional tutoring, mentoring after school for their students.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Ms. Phelps?
have a couple of questions. Thank you. Do we offer dual enrollment now for teaching through Germana or?
Currently, we do not. We are presenting this because we're bringing the program back to Spotsylvania. So right now, the program that we have is an early childhood education program. And Mr. Wolf, you chime in if I'm saying something that I shouldn't. But we do have some of our students that enroll in the early childhood program that will then matriculate to Germana and continue to be prepared to do work maybe in a child care facility and that kind of thing. But for a teacher prep dual enrollment option, that is why we're presenting it tonight, because we currently do not have that.
So if if my daughter lived in Post Oak area and she wanted to do the teaching, she would have to take a bus from out there to Chancellor, or is it offered at Spotsy High School?
It will be one program offered at Chancellor High School for all students to access. So they would, much like if they go to a course or program at CTC, be transported there.
And that's our transportation department, that's all covered?
We've been working diligently with transportation as well.
Because that's a huge, I think we brought this up before, but I guess like the superintendent said, doesn't matter. I guess we're going to implement it anyway, so I appreciate your hard work, and that's it, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you. And first of all, I want to say to Ms. Colbert and Dr. Wyatt, excellent briefing, excellent presentation. You know, when you can take something that's actually very complicated and make it sound simple, you've done a good job. So I want to thank both of you for your presentation. It was excellent, well done. I had a couple questions. One of the concerns that I had, and it is not a concern in the program, but in terms of partnership, I noticed that there was no HBCUs that were offered. Do they not have a supporting program? Did we not consider them? What was the, I mean, I see that we had Shenandoah. Why did we consider Virginia Union or Virginia State, please?
I'll speak to that. Currently, as Dr. Wyatt indicated, Shenandoah has already established very robust partnerships with other school divisions and have already established those clear pathways and alignment with their course offerings to easily be able to offer those students the dual enrollment credits. Certainly we can explore it, but based on the communications we have had in conjunction with the VDOE, I'm not really aware of an HBCU that actually has a established connection with the course and being able to translate it, because there are some complex pieces in making sure that the content that's covered is aligned to the expectations of the course that's being offered by the university. So at this point in time, we selected that partnership with Shenandoah because of, one, the alignment of the curriculum to what their expectations are for the students to gain the college credit, and then just the reputation of really helping to facilitate a strong program in conjunction with our local schools.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Were you going to add into that, Dr. Wyatt?
No, it's pretty much the same information. Now, once the student does earn that college credit, if their family moves out of state or goes somewhere else, they can, of course, go to whatever college of their choice and fill out the form to see if those credits will transfer in and at what level they will transfer in to a comparable course at that college or university, which would include a HBCU.
Yeah, and I guess my concern in that is that there's been a great effort to capture minority teachers. Mm-hmm. And so if we want to get ahead of the curve on that, and we are promoting a program that doesn't incentivize that, then we're going to continuously miss the mark on that. In my humble opinion, I could be wrong. And I would just say, if they don't have a program that is transferable, and we know that, it is what it is. But if they have a program or are interested in implementing this or integrating with us, then I think we should be very proactive in that integration, because there's great opportunities in seeding into those type of partnerships. So,
Mr. Braswell, there are HBCUs that offer summer introductions to education and careers in teaching, but they are like week-long summer programs traditionally. They are not full year offering our students college courses. So
right, okay.
there are summer programs that, of course, we will expose them to.
So they, more or less, they don't.
It's not a part of the Virginia Teach for Tomorrow program, though. It's separate. It's something that the universities offer to students, but their families would apply for it separately, so it's not through our school division.
In other words, you're saying their programs don't line up with our program of instruction?
With the state requirements for Virginia.
I understand, okay.
Thank you.
On this, okay. Just one additional question.
This might be a question for you, LaShawn. Real quick, can you guide me to where I can find the cost, the funding that would be required for this new program? In order to support it, I was just wondering, is there cost associated with it? I mean, transportation cost?
There's one FTE, and there's whatever the transportation cost is really the only cost, but that could be done through shifts. Could be in terms of shifting of staffing based on the enrollment in the course. So we can get the cost of what an FTE would be, plus the transportation. But other than that, if we have to, we'll make it cost neutral with other types of adjustments.
And the cost for a teacher roughly is about $66,000, if you're looking for a number per se.
Yeah, I was looking for a number, just, in order to at least have an idea, even though it's still going to be implemented without, maybe the school board member individual support.
Let me also say, if the board has any objections to this.
I do.
Yeah, if you have an objection to this, you can certainly.
Order.
Thank you.
Everybody's asking questions. Let's let her finish asking her question, and then we'll move on. Are you done, Ms. Phelps?
Thank you, I'm done,
Okay,
thank
thank
you.
Go ahead, Mr. Twig.
So if we have one teacher on this project, does that mean students are going there 1 day a week or 2 days a week to get lectured by this person all day, and then they go back to their regular schools?
Me? Okay. All right, I didn't want to overspeak you, Mrs. Colbert. This teacher would also pick up additional courses. So please understand, although yes, we're asking for a full-time position to make this work, the position is the position for the students or their classwork is every other day on an AB schedule over a 2-block period.
So 2 or 3 days a week, they're at their routine high
Right,
school?
but it does require
Is that
this
true?
I'm sorry, say that again,
2
sir.
or 3 days a week, they'll be at their routine high school?
Depending on the AB schedule.
Thank you.
Yes. But please understand that the person who is responsible for this program has a heavy caseload to manage because they have to manage the teachers at the middle and the elementary school level, as well as there's some paperwork involved, monitoring of students, making sure that all of their online stuff is done for them. There's coursework, there's grading, there's observation reports. So this is a heavy piece for a teacher going in to do this.
Right. I'm all over the IB program. I understand exactly what you're saying. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, again, I want to say thank you for the presentation. I actually think it's an excellent program. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is absolutely crazy. And so I'm appreciative of the fact that we're actually thinking out of the box and doing things a little bit differently. Now, we're here again to gather information, and that's what we're going to do. Everyone has a right to their own opinion or vote on any particular issue as it pertains to the budget, and we'll give all board members a chance to elaborate on how they feel in that regard. But this board is composed of 7 members, and 7 members will make a decision on the budget. And in the interim, all we're going to do is collect data and information. If you like it, great, and if you don't, oh well. So let's move on to 3.04.
Mr. Braswell, if I just may, I would like to acknowledge Mr. Wolf and Mr. Mitchell for their collaboration with Dr. Wyatt and I. This is certainly not just an HR initiative that's moving forward, but we didn't say that, but I do want to, it was great to hear your feedback and your compliments, but we couldn't do it without Mr. Wolf's support and Tom, so I call for your forgiveness for interrupting you, but I do think it's important to acknowledge him and those folks on the other side of the building.
And they deserve some love
They
as
needed
well.
some love on that too.
Okay, well, a point well taken. Let's move on to 3.04, Health Insurance Action Plan for consideration. Who is offering? Ms. Gaines?
Yes.
Please.
If we can also have the floor computer. And right before we talk about health insurance, Mr. Braswell, I know this is one of your topics that you really enjoy. We wanted to just pause for a moment and have the instruction team present to you some school-level investments. The beauty about this segment of our presentation tonight is that it does cover all three budget priorities of the superintendent as it pertains to attracting and retaining quality staff, as it pertains to increasing student learning, and also supporting a safe learning environment. I also want to give kudos to all of our principals and our directors, because this year in developing the budget, each of them very purposefully and intentionally did go into our Google budget request sheet, and they made certain requests for their schools to make sure their students do succeed. So I do want to give a shout out to our principals and directors. When you look at this particular slide here, basically it's twofold. It speaks to our student demographic trends. The main thing we want to point out is that this is over a 10-year period. And when you look at this 10-year period, you may see that our general ed count is relatively flat. However, you will recognize for our SPED students, over this 10-year period, 382 students more, or 14%. For our English learners, 615 more, or 67%. And then for our ECD, you're looking at 2,630 more, or 40%. So in essence, we just want to highlight for you that while our students are relatively flat, the needs of our students have grown significantly. And what you're going to see in a moment is that for every school that we have, they will be provided with some additional support to be successful. Here, what we wanted to outline for you is our special education budget ran by Mrs. Richardson. Her and her staff, they do an amazing job. When you look here, you can see the adopted budget from FY15 at about $34.7 million, and for the budget that's before you this evening, $47.8. Again, this is an area that is growing significantly. You can also see the adopted FTEs, and then for the budget, this piece is most critical. We're receiving $4.7 million from the federal government, $9.2 from the state, and $33.9 from the locality. So in essence, the state and the federal, they have not kept up with their promises in terms of supporting students with disabilities, which you are aware of. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Flanard and her team to take you further into the presentation. Ms. Flanard.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines, and thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dr. Baker and Dr. Martin. I would like to begin by just asking that I am the individual who gets to present the instruction positions that we are requesting in this year's budget, but I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the team that I have with me this evening that has helped us greatly to put this together. So if my crew could just raise their hands so that the board could see how many folks it does take to put this all together. So thank you very much, guys. That's right. I'm the voice for the moment. For the moment, I'm the voice. But I do have a deep bench, so as needed, we can certainly go to it if questions arise that I will need support with. The slide that you see before you are the 24 proposed additional teaching positions, and I heavily would like to focus on that word proposed. This is a moving target. It does take into consideration projected enrollments. It does take into consideration projected opportunities for students in regards to picking courses and things of that nature, as far as the opportunity for choice. So these are very much projections at this time. I will tell you that it does include some veterinary science and the future educators that we just so graciously heard about, as well as some cybersecurity. And you will see that it is all encompasses every level. So it also does have efforts to reduce class size as well. In addition to Dr. Baker's comment earlier, it would also support the 150 for our secondary level, as well as 200 for PE. The 20 proposed additional elementary paraeducators, the paraeducators would focus primarily at the primary levels, and they would be really focused in the area of literacy and mathematics, really supporting our students with phonological disorders such as dyslexia or forms of dyslexia. So these would be you can see where the positions are. You can see that there are 2 allocated on these slides for our 3 largest elementary schools. So that's why it is 20 instead of 17. The 3 largest schools are in the ranges of about 800 students. So that's why we took that into consideration. On the next slide, you will see the 14 proposed additional counselors. Ms. Gaines alluded to this earlier. The 14 positions are currently our current actual standards of quality. If we were to look at whether or not we're meeting that, really it's about 12 out of the 29 schools are actually currently meeting the ratios, which was elementary is 1 to 500, middle is 1 to 400, and high school is 1 to 350. If the proposed legislation were to pass and those numbers would significantly be reduced as far as the ratio, then we would certainly need at a minimum 16 positions to just make that requirement. So it would be something that we would be looking at in regards to potentially moving that 14 to 16 additional counselors. Again, these are based on projections. And as we know, projections are a moving target. So these are things that we would be looking and meeting with HR and as well as principals to talk about not only school needs, but as far as where enrollment lies as well. In the area of special education, the proposed positions that you see before you, the 18 additional positions, really are twofold. Many of the positions you see are actual programs that we do need to add because of the number of students that have moved in from the last December 1 count. So many of the positions in the entire first column, as well as the one on the top of the second column, are all programs in which we need to create and therefore add a teacher to. The high incident teacher is commonly referred to as a learning disabled teacher. The reason why we refer to it as a high incident teacher is that the disability does not match necessarily the program. In other words, you could have a student with autism that is a high functioning autistic student that could be served by a learning disabled teacher. So we do not necessarily equate a label of a disability to a program. The next slide, thank you, is the paraeducator supports that matches the previous slide. So in other words, if you have a autism program, then our students in that autism class also require paraeducator support. So the number of special education programs that are required does include paraeducator support, and that's what these 20 positions are allocated for. The 14 additional social workers, are a tremendous support that we would be able to, for the first time in this county for as long as I can remember, and I know Ms. Richardson will give me a look if I'm incorrect, but the 14 proposed additional social workers would allow us to have 1 social worker per school. And I can tell you that that is, the principals probably behind me would be clapping if they would be allowed to, because it is probably the school counselors and the social workers are the number 1 request that we are hearing from our teachers and our principals and our community about the need to support the mental health. So this would allow 1 per site. The 10 additional L students. Our L students, currently, I get asked this question every year, so Ms. Shelley, I'm prepared in advance. As of January, we have a total of 1,596 L students, which includes service as well as monitor. And if you are curious, our current ratio for L teacher to student, serviced and monitor combined, is 1:60, which is why we are proposing to increase that to 10 L teachers. Again, these proposals are based on current enrollments as well as where we are projecting, as well as the level of need. We are seeing an increase of L population on parts of the county where we typically had not seen L population increases. So the western or southern end of the county, depending on how you look at it, has seen an increase in L students, and therefore we also are seeing a need to not only decrease the ratio to make that more accessible for our students, but we're also seeing an increase across the board as far as our student population. The 6 content coaches and 5 administrative interns are actually on the same page. So first we will discuss the 6 content coaches. The 6 content coaches, this is a tiered approach. Many of you are aware that we currently have a liaison program, and the liaison program is, they do tremendous work. They are full-time teachers that also support the content area itself as well. And even though they are one of the hardest working groups, we have heard from our teachers, our liaisons, our principals, that we need additional support to move content in order to be able to have curriculum in a more timely fashion as far as the changes that occur to a curriculum, as far as making sure the assessments are the best that they could possibly be so that we can move instruction the way that we want to move instruction for our students. So this is a tiered approach with 6 of the lead content coaches. It's important for the board to know that the content coaches will be housed at schools. So they would not be housed in one particular school. They will be working alongside the coaching staff that currently exists so that we can have a pronged approach of moving the content curriculum as well as the pedagogical approaches in order to best serve our student and adult learning needs. The administrative interns. The administrative interns, again, this is a proposal. This is looking at adding additional support to our high schools as well as our middle, as well as some of our elementary schools. This is looking to assist with overall safety, security of the the body, as well as an opportunity to grow our own, and looking at opportunities to grow administrators so that we can have a pipeline for administration as well. On the next slide, you will see 2 instructional technology positions. The first one is actually a crossover position between instructional technology as well as transportation. This is an individual who is an engineer that can help program the GPS side for the buses as well as the voice over IP for the phone system that we currently have, which is also part of the enhanced safety and security that will continue to increase and be enhanced. So that is a division-wide support. And the next position is the instructional technology. It's actually a field technician, and this individual would be supporting the increase of additional devices. We are looking to pilot potentially having a one-to-one initiative at some of our schools in the future, and the more devices does mean more opportunities to service said devices. So we certainly need to have an individual that would probably support 3 to 4 schools to look at adding opportunities to make sure that these are individuals that go across this entire school division, because instructional technology, certainly its primary function is in the world of instruction, but they certainly service every single department we have, because technology runs throughout our entire school system. And then I'm going to turn this over to Don Upperco, who's going to talk about the proposed positions within his world.
Thank you, Dr. Fenard. soon-to-be Dr. Flanard. Mr. Braswell, members of the board, Dr. Becker, Dr. Martin. The first item here would be 7 school safety officers. A school safety officer or SSO program that is expanded to include SSOs at each of the middle schools will provide an increased safety and security capability for each principal. The SSO is a school employee, works directly for the principal, is responsible for assisting in the overall maintenance of safe school environment by conducting surveillance of the school building and its grounds and activities and ensuring the security of the school by enforcing established rules and regulations. The supervisor of student discipline will assist the director of school safety with investigations, appeals, hearings, reassignments to the alternative education program, re-enrollments as a result of release from juvenile detention, alternative education program transitions back to the schools as a result of disciplinary action, code of student conduct review and implementation, data collection and dissemination, and then professional development presentations as well. The coordinator of safety and security is a position that will also assist the director of school safety in overseeing the implementation of and/or sustainability of various safety-related programs, in particular the access control keyless entry program that we're initiating, video intercom system, school security cameras, Raptor visitor management system, emergency notification system, school safety audits, physical design and procedures for school entrances, SRO and SSO review, the review of threat assessment reports, and as well as coordinating efforts with other departments and principals. Next, we go into the world of transportation. The special needs bus routing analyst. This is definitely a needs-based request. With the continued growth in our special needs population and programming, the demand for planning routes and placing students in the most efficient and cost-effective manner has become too much for just one person to manage effectively, which is our current model. This department is at the point where we need to find the right individual that can be properly trained in the use of our routing software and can work hand in hand with our automated routing coordinator, our coordinator of special needs, and the Office of Student Support Services to manage the routing demands that are evolving daily. The special education bus drivers, we're asking for 5. And again, needs-driven. With the continued growth in the area of special needs, additional contracts are needed to meet the demands as we move forward to meet the needs of our students. The middle school head custodian is a much-needed position in the area of maintenance. When the maintenance department assumed full in-house custodial operations last year, one head custodian was responsible for overseeing the custodial crews at both Chancellor High School and the custodial crew at Chancellor Middle School. The additional oversight and supervision provided by this new position is deemed critical to ensuring optimal custodial services are maintained and enhanced at both schools. The Transportation Communication Specialist. In keeping with the goal of improving customer service, this position would manage communication to parents and school building management concerning routing and delays. Additionally, would be responsible for preparation of printed training materials, handbooks, website management, and work with the division's Office of Communication and Community Engagement in areas that are related to the Department of Transportation and Fleet Services. I'm going to let Mrs. Gaines, I believe, address the next item here, the finance IT programmer. Okay. So I'm skipping that, correct? Okay, I apologize. I'm skipping that one. But I'm going straight to the high school clinical assistant floater. This is in our area of health services. Currently, the Hour Clinic Assistant supports 4 of our busiest our high school clinics, our high acuity clinics actually, which on average between August through July have had 1,525 clinic visits each. The clinic assistant provides support to 13 other elementary schools and 7 middle schools as needed, and assists with state-mandated hearing and vision screening, as well as Head Start hearing, height, and weight screenings. This year, over 5,600 students have been screened for hearing and vision. Converting this position from an hourly status to full-time to 7.5 hours a day will provide our clinics with much-needed additional support and providing the care needed by our students in the most appropriate, effective, and efficient manner, which will directly decrease the amount of missed instruction time.
So in terms of the finance IT programmer position, this particular person will assist us with system administration responsibilities in terms of system admin. Also, it is our goal to take our reporting and financial analysis to the next level of excellence, being that we'll be in a position where we can send reports directly to directors and principals in the morning so that they can see what their current allocations look like. Also, we want to give accolades to the HR department and the payroll team led by Melissa Rose for successfully implementing the Munis payroll system on time and accurately. And that is very key, and they are due really the utmost praise and accommodation. In talking to Munis, they did indicate that this is one of the best implementations that they have seen, and kudos also goes to our principals, our directors, and our payroll secretaries. I've heard of implementations whereby they failed, but ours were successful. And as a board, we thank you for your support with that particular implementation. So that basically completes our presentation this evening on the 149 positions. That does take us to slide 69. And 67, and we did already discuss this previously, but we did increase our allocations for our schools based on their October 1st count, and this is about $300,000. The beauty of this is that this does also touch all 3 goals presented by the superintendent, and this will allow teachers not to have to use their personal funds when trying to buy items. So again, we want to put more monies into the pockets of our teachers. We also would be remiss this evening if we did not share with you on slide 69, while we did present to you 149 positions, the total requests coming in actually exceeded 300. So we have here about 174 positions that did not make the level 2 budget. However, this is a good start as well as we start to work on the budget for 2021. We did mention previously that the non-compensation requests, they too were cut in half. And again, we can look at those as we begin to prepare the budget for 2021. And then that takes us into the health insurance, but we can pause for a moment.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines. And before I open up the floor for questions, if you have questions and concerns to the presentation that you feel that you might be able to get effectively answered offline in the essence of savings time, then I would ask that you hold that question and you can ask that question offline. So I'll start now. Well, I mean, if there's something that is just a general question, it's the essence of time. But if you have something that you need some immediate, resolution to, I would ask that we just hold it until offline so we can continue. Dr. Meyer.
A question, because of the profile of a Virginia graduate, has that component of counseling that's attached to it? And with the going through the listing of the counselor's positions on page 29, are any of those attached to or tasked with giving guidance to students for career pathways?
All of them are. Actually, no, to be specific, Dr. Meyer, yes, there is a component of the Virginia profile, a Virginia graduate that began with our ninth grade now. That
Correct.
is currently in there, and we do have Emily Hall, who is overseeing
Good.
the current working with the community to create internships and opportunities. I know that Mr. Wolf is probably chomping at the bit to take the mic, so I will let him, as well as Mr. Mitchell, I'm sure, is eager to answer. But to answer you specifically, we actually are required now at the middle school level even to start creating career pathways for our students. And so we are doing that with a program that actually has been begun this year with our Naviance has moved just from high school and has moved down to the middle school level. So even starting in elementary with the exposure to college and career readiness, but is really ramped up and when we start to get to the secondary level with middle school. So our school counselors are absolutely integral in really creating those opportunities. Is there something you'd want to add to that, Mr. Wolf?
Good evening, Chair, members of the board, Dr. Baker and Dr. Martin. Dr. Meyer, in regards to your question, I really appreciate, as I'm sure as our other counselors as well, is really supporting that position of the career development counselor over at the Career and Tech Center has been instrumental in really moving forward with our business partnerships and our business connections as well as our regional partnerships. And but certainly talking with our other school counselors to make sure that we are really staying focused on the profile of a Virginia graduate in the 5 Cs. So it's been really instrumental in that.
Okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions? Ms. Phelps?
So maybe you can clarify, but last year was the 60 positions, FY19 in the adopted budget was 60 positions, am I correct?
Yes.
And
That's
so,
correct.
and then the following year was 30, let me write. I had in my notes that 120 spread out over 3 years, with 60 being added last year. Is that correct from my notes? It was from my notes from last year's budget?
That's correct, but we also said in a presentation at a minimum 30 positions for 2020. We did go back and look at previous year presentations. And again, if you keep in mind, many of these items that you see here are now here because of new legislation that was not in existence back in last year when we were preparing for 2019.
So these are included. So in other words,
They're included, yes,
pretty
ma'am.
much, I don't know, I had 138, and then you said 140.
It's 138 directly support to the classroom. Then you have another 11 that's supporting student learning. 138 plus 11 is the 149.
Okay, that's where you got that from. Okay, and that's what I was wondering, if the 30 was included.
It is, yes.
In the 138 that we're asking for this year. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Ms. Grant?
Yes, ma'am.
We, besides the new positions for our custodial staff, which we're still building, the maintenance staff level, the maintenance department is still below 2009 levels, right?
That's correct.
Do you know how much lower?
I think Mr. Hockaday knows. I do know that 2 positions that we recommended were not able to make the cut this year, so to speak.
Well, correct, I knew about those, and I knew they
Right.
didn't make the cut. I just didn't know how still far behind we are the 2009 staffing levels in that department.
Yeah, I'd have to defer to Mr. Hockaday on that one.
10, it looks like. Thank you.
10.
Ms. Grant, you're done? Okay. Mr. Twig?
Regarding slide 65, proposed position allocations, special ed bus routing analyst, and then, of course, some drivers. And why is that being proposed now, and was it proposed years past?
On the special needs bus drivers, is that what you're referring to?
And routing analyst, I guess that's an office worker.
The 2 special ed bus drivers, 5-hour positions. It's proposed now because we continue to have an increase in that special needs population, and frankly, we need that in order to meet that need.
Okay, is that an office position, the routing analyst?
It can be a supervisory position as well, but this is actually a bus driver in the bus position.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's encouraging, good enough.
It has some lead driver responsibilities that go along with that.
And then don't we, thank you for that, above that, coordinator for safety and security, don't we already have that position filled?
We have a director of safety and security. The director also doubles as the superintendent's hearing officer for disciplinary matters. This would actually be, coordinator would be reporting to, the supervisor would be reporting to the director based on the needs of the district and the ever-increasing situations that are developing that require more attention.
Okay, then wouldn't we, would the fact of erasing a director's position and having a specialist in security discipline and then having another specialist in safety be a possible outcome for remedy?
I can help a little bit with that because this was a role, Mr. Twigg, that I really helped to conceive of. And part of it, I think you are on to something when you're saying that looking at more specialized support because, Mr. Lynn's role is quite expanded as it currently is. And I think as we're trying on two fronts, one, the proactive safety security side, but also the proactive side of discipline and support for schools in not just being on a reactive, responding to things that have happened.
About that.
So I think right now we are looking at just one. I think your idea about could you have two, especially at different levels, is not a bad idea either to think about. But right now we were just trying to say, can we have our director of safety have more opportunities to be proactively in schools and not so reactive to sometimes with long-term situations. And the other thing, discipline is, the primary intention of discipline is to change behavior and to help those students become able to better, to address their learning needs and not just to have a short-term suspension or a long-term suspension. So we also want more support in helping to, I think it was mentioned, that transition to and from, because usually if there's misbehavior, it's not just because of one thing, there's maybe multiple factors. So we want some additional assistance to help with, transition back and forth between different programs as well as between the school and the home.
Okay.
More capacity there. But I think to your point is, can we eventually consider, specialists in the different side?
In the disciplines.
Certainly something we could consider.
Sure.
But we were trying to say, what could we do with just one position?
Check. I like the concept of evolution there. That's good. And then lastly and quickly, slide 59, special ed teacher positions. I noticed we have $1.1 million surplus. I noticed on the budget slide that there special ed wants an additional approximately $1 million, a little over. I'm presuming that's for these teacher positions. Is that a fair statement? It's 100% for this effect?
Yes.
And then if and as that's the case, are we to presume, and hopefully you can affirm this, you have adequate equipment and supplies to maintain at each school? It's just a matter of factoring in the guidance rules for these paraeducators, et cetera.
That is
that a
correct.
fair statement?
Yes, fair
That's
statement.
exciting to hear. I just wanted to clarify that and
Certainly.
hope that that was an accurate presumption on my part. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bill, did you have a question?
Just some comments.
Oh, if you have a comment, go ahead.
I'd like to thank the staff for really some terrific presentations here and very interesting, thought-provoking, and confusing, as far as I'm concerned, get everything straight in my mind. And I'd like to talk just briefly about values for just a minute. Earlier, we were talking about, and I want to address just the one area of education that we're just on the periphery, actually, and that's the whole preschool level and the primary grades, actually. Earlier in the evening, I think You mentioned, Ms. Flinard, that there are 261 children in our preschool at this point, Head Start and Virginia Primary Initiative, right? Right. Do you have any idea how many children live in Spotsylvania who would fit into that category? If you could add them all up, would be 1,800, 2,000?
It's a fantastic question, Mr. Blaine, and I know that I can go to the bench and ask Dawn Miller to probably give us more clarity on that information, and I believe Dawn is probably...
A specific isn't. She's here. Yeah.
Yeah, come up to the mic, Dawn. I know that you would like to come up to the microphone and be able to speak so that everyone can hear. Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Good evening, Chairman Braswell and members of the board, Dr. Baker, Dr. Martin. Mr. Blaine, the state every year gives us a proposed number of preschool children that would be eligible for the Virginia Preschool Initiative Program, and the number at this point in time is 326, 28, somewhere around there. It is projected to go up again for 2019 and 20.
Mm-hmm. So how many children live in Spotsylvania that would be eligible because of their age?
Well, according to the state, that's the number that they give us.
What number? That's
329 children in Spotsylvania would be eligible for VPI, according to their calculations.
The question I'm asking is how many children at that age level are living in Spotsylvania, really? There must be about 1,800 or 1,900 kids.
So you're asking about the kindergarten age child. How many kindergarten age children?
Who would be eligible for kindergarten or preschool? Yes. It's a very general.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. There are more preschoolers, sorry. There are more preschool-aged children, Mr. Blaine, but for Virginia Preschool Initiative, there is an income requirement.
Yes.
And that is based on a lot of the pieces that we send to the state in terms of our local composite index and all of those things.
Thank you. That's really, I think, an appropriate answer. The point that I'm trying to make is there are a lot of children from an age standpoint who would benefit by the things that we teach kindergarten, our preschoolers.
Absolutely.
Whether or not they're in a preschool program is another issue.
Absolutely.
And that's about, if we only have 300 out of the 1,800, we're missing a lot of kids. And that doesn't mean that a lot of young children are not getting the training they have at home, but many do not.
Right. And we do have roughly 1,600 students that matriculate into kindergarten every year, between 1,475 and 1,600, give or take.
Okay. Thank you for filling in, and I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
The point I want to make with this discussion, though, is that this is where everything starts. If you have children whose mother and fathers have read to them, we used to say, look, if you're on the way home from the hospital and you haven't read to that child yet, you better get going because you're late. And that's not an overstatement, literally. And I meet parents of young children every day who, I said something, have you been reading to that 3-year-old? Oh, what? Why would you do that? And those kids who come to kindergarten and enroll, who have had a background, we know are ready to go and they're ready to learn. And if they have not learned at kindergarten, they're already a year or two behind in some ways from other children in those same classrooms. And when are they going to catch up? The chances are increasingly bad. And you're getting up into high school and you begin to find kids that are kind of on the dropout path already. So I'm really pleased with all of the presentations that have been made this evening. But I want to emphasize that we did not talk about the very foundation, and I would love to see us be able to offer to every parent in Spotsylvania who has a preschooler an opportunity to have them in a formal preschool program. And that would be a wonderful investment, and it's outside the purview of our kindergarten first. I know that, but we need to move, it seems to me, in that direction. And, and the challenge with young children is if you don't teach them when they're ready to learn, you try it next year, and it's twice as hard. And a lot of those kids begin not to get it every year. And so I'm emphasizing in all my comments that that's where we need, I would like to see us increase the attention that we're giving to those children at that age and the parents who have young children. And I think that's really where I'm coming from right now. I think we've heard some terrific programs, and I'm looking at what we've heard presented by the various staff people today. This is a really comprehensive proposal that the superintendent has put together, I think. And the question is, we can afford to do this. Spotsylvania can. We've got the average income, we've got the capability, and we need to think as we move into this discussion over the next few days and few weeks, how we're going to handle that. And with that, I'll let you have this floor again, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and we'll have one more by Ms. Phelps, and then I'll speak. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Now that we're on the VPI, I had a question that just popped in my head. Is there an annual VPI enrollment in order to maintain the funding year over year? Like, in other words, I think, is there like a requirement? I was just wondering if the enrollment isn't as per the state 300, and if it's below, is there like a requirement we have to meet at year over year in order to keep that funding coming in?
There isn't a requirement, but there is a match that we need to make locally. And in order to make that match, you almost need students in sets of 18, because you get one teacher and one paraeducator for a classroom of 18. So I guess you could kind of think of it as when you add, every time you add, you get 18 more students, but you have to add the investment of another teacher and a paraeducator. And so it isn't a direct one-to-one match. It is based on the local ability to pay, whatever that is. But that's kind of how it works. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, what's the enrollment now?
What was the figure I gave you, Carol?
Sure. We currently serve 139. It's on slide 12 if you want to reference it later. It's 139 students in VPI and 122 in Head Start.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
You're
That just
welcome.
came to my mind while I was sitting
And
there
Ms. Phelps, I
listening.
did just want to note that it also doesn't include the outfitting of a classroom. So there is all the expense of
Furniture and
that
those
typically is one time until materials and things need to be replaced, but there is the outfitting of the materials themselves as well.
Okay.
Ms. Flenard, thank you for your, did you have another question?
Yeah, I just wanted I missed the
No, go ahead.
opportunity on the Tedra Richardson. I know, I always ask you because I just have new questions that come up. The state average of the students with disability, the percentage, is that 12, somewhere like 12?
It's somewhere around 12 to 13%. I think actually the last time I looked at it, the state was at 13.4%.
Do we have like a percentage, the division, like with the categories of percentage of that are autism, ED, LD, OHI?
I have the actual numbers. We could calculate the percentage of the total count. So our December 1st count, we were at 3160, which did reflect quite a significant increase across several categories. That count captures plus 21 students with intellectual disabilities, plus 34 students with speech language impairments, plus 58 for students with other health impairments, plus 25 for students with autism spectrum disorders, and plus 18 for students with developmental disabilities. But we certainly could look at our current count, that count, and break out what percentage of the count make up senior students with autism, so on and so forth. So we can get that to you.
I saw the governor's budget, and what struck me, of course, it was the Regional Special Education Fund.
Yes.
Do we participate in that with other?
Yes, we do. For several years, and even years prior to my coming here, we were part of the Prince William County Regional Program, and that is what was able to start courthouse and gateway academies.
Do we take advantage of the
Yes, we do.
funds? Okay.
Yes, we do, for courthouse and gateway academies.
Okay.
The current proposed restructuring by the governor and General Assembly would allow us to partner with other school divisions, and we've been having conversations across Region 3 with how we can partner with other localities to maximize services to students.
Like Stafford, maybe?
Stafford, King George, Caroline. The great thing about the proposed restructuring is it doesn't limit the disability categories of students that we can serve, whereas the current model does.
That was my kind of question. All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, and I want to thank Ms. Flenard for your presentation, Mr. Upperco. I want to thank Ms. Dawn Miller for being on the spot and coming down and giving us a good presentation. I was really inspired by what Mr. Blaine has had said, and if we all know that Mr. Blaine is a strong advocate for early childhood education, and he said something I found that was very striking, and being that my mother lives with me, I'm going to ask her if she read to me on the way home. I'm going to let you know when I get a chance, Bill, if I hope it wasn't too late. We're going to move on now to Health Insurance Action Plan. If we could, who's present? Ms. Gaines, are you presenting that?
And this
Thank you.
particular session of our presentation will be very brief, Mr. Braswell, because you will recall staff did present along with Anthem at your pre-budget work session. So the main takeaway for this section, number one, Dr. Baker did have the staff start the Employee Compensation Focus Group back in 2017. We did embark upon a 5-year plan, and based on the Employee Compensation Focus Group, we do have some suggestions for you to consider. The first one is for 2020, there will be no increase in the employee rate or the employer rate, which is huge. So whatever pay raise the employees receive, it will not be negated by a rate increase. Number two, there will be no plan design changes when you look at Key Care Expanded and Key Care 500. And then lastly, what we're looking to do, and let me just go to that slide, which is slide 71. If you look at 2020, we're recommending from the Employee Compensation Focus Group to add a high deductible health plan coupled with a health savings account. This will be done in addition to the two plans. So starting 2020, if the board approves this, our employees come October 1st will now have 3 plans. 3 plans, right? Number two, working with Ms. Colbert in HR. Next month, we're going to start to commensurate some employee educational sessions because that's going to be very, very key. And then what we're going to look to do is to probably have those February all the way through open enrollment. So we could even have some come August and September. And with that, that is basically the overview there. The next slide here, you'll just see some of the highlights coming from the Employee Compensation Focus Group in terms of salary increases, the substitute rate, and the stipend rate. Here, you saw this on November 26th, how the two plans work together. I know that Stafford does offer a high deductible health plan. They started maybe about a year or two ago, and they have about 40 or so staff persons. In total, right now, we have 2,257 employees who are part of our health insurance plan. So some could migrate to this plan. Here, the plan deductibles, like I said before, no changes in the two existing plans. That is what you're looking at in terms of the plan design, which is the final column. In terms of the deductibles and in terms of the premium rates, the high deductible health plan, those rates will be lower, of course, because you will pay more when you go to the doctor. So you'll pay more when you access the services. Also, based on one of the comments that we have received from you, Mr. Braswell, could the committee look at startup funds or seed funds? And we are looking to do that in year one, looking at a seed of about $1,200, which would be $100 each month. So employees should find some value in that if they do determine that this is the right plan for them and their families. Now, at this time, we come to the CIP plan, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Let's stop for a moment for questions on health insurance. Ms. Graham.
I just have two, one's a comment and one's a question from this section. And I just want to say that I think that the suggestions from the employee compensation focus group are pretty important for this budget season, and one of the things they chose to highlight was that we should apply all employees with the same salary increase. So that was nice to have that direction straight from the employees. And the other thing I wanted to point out is not with the new health plan, it's just what we already currently have, and just to look at for the future. For our deductibles for the Key Care expanded or 500, it's much more difficult to get to your deductible if you're on employee plus one versus family, and you're on the same deductible requirement. So for two people to get to $1,000, you have a lot of out-of-pocket expenses, where if you have a family of 5, you're going to get to $1,000 a lot easier. So I was just wondering if we could look at lowering the requirement for a middle tier, maybe a $750 for employee plus one.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Twigg.
As the insurance representatives, experts, giving you an indication of a trend change by any chance? Or are they just speaking this year and hoping and crossing fingers and et cetera?
They did provide us with a presentation, Mr. Twigg, and based on their preliminary analysis, they're saying our projected increase for 2020 will be 1.5%. But in working with the superintendent for the budget proposal, he is not recommending any increases for the employees or the employer. So staff does support that, and we're hopeful that you all will too.
Possible 1+% next year? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. But we have adequate funds in our reserve. So we're recommending that we not
that. And then what about
increase
the
that.
other 2 out years after that? Years
Well,
2 and
normally
3?
they do it 1 year at a time, and so,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
They didn't say anything about that?
No, but
officially?
what we can say, if all goes as planned, because of the amount of funds that we have in our reserve, we can look at 2021 to see if we can do something
Counter it,
similar.
surely.
But
Thank
we'll
you.
definitely update you.
Thanks a lot.
Ms. Phelps.
I know this was a big topic last year, right? And the year before, and the year before, and the year before. So, is there any roadmap, or have you done any research on the clinics, the in-house healthcare clinics? And what has been done, what does it look like? I've done research and data with other school divisions, and it seems like it's a positive outcome for the employees as far as out-of-pocket expenses, and have an on-site doctor, nurse practitioner, doctor, and pharmacy. So I was just wondering if we are exploring that, if it's open, if it's still on the table for outlying years, and how long would it, what does it look like?
Sure. With the 5-year health insurance plan that we've been working on, that is one of the things that the task force or committee has discussed. And so far, what we've done, we've had several individuals come in and give us presentations to let us know exactly what it could look like. They've also put us in contact with other school districts such as Hampton, city schools, to go out and visit their clinic. And then also, we've had some discussions also with the county. The main thing that we would have to do is to determine the location and the startup cost of the facility, because you would have to do an investment. So when we reconvene the group starting in September, this is another area that we will revisit again and continue to explore. So it is on the table for us to review.
So that would be, September would be another year, just kind of.
You have to have at least a 2-year planning phase, and our goal initially of the committee was to first modernize our health insurance plans. Now that we have accomplished that, we can focus our efforts now on the clinic. So we wanted to be strategic and methodical.
Because we have a nice clinic down at the transportation.
And
I took
sure.
a tour of it, and it was just like a nice upscale doctor's office that had everything there. So that's what gave me the idea, or just to follow through to ask the question.
Sure.
That's it.
So we are exploring it to answer your question.
I want to commend you, Ms. Gaines, and your staff for doing something that a lot of people were hesitant about doing 3 years ago, which was leaning forward and making some recommendations for structural changes in the way we do health insurance. And now this division is starting to glean some of the benefits from that. So I want to thank you personally, because, you know, when you're dealing with folks that don't want to look at something new, especially when it comes to health insurance, what you did saved us a lot of money. I think the number last year was about $3.6 million. Do you have any idea this year what we should be able to glean in terms of savings in health insurance?
Because we're keeping everything constant, but what I can share with you is that because of the changes that you made for 2019, we did see that our health insurance in 19, in terms of the total cost, have declined. So what that means is that individuals have made other alternatives. So we would need some time to quantify that. But for 2020, because we're keeping our rate the same, we're keeping the employee rate the same, right now, Mr. Braswell, we just want to stabilize, and then we'll be able to make some other adjustments in 2021. But I can add to the number for sure.
When we can get that number, I think it's an important number, and the reason why is that we made some structural changes in a major budget driver that saved an awful lot of money, and that's something the school division should be commended for. A lot of times people will criticize the school division, not realizing that that is a substantial amount of money that was saved for tackling an issue that is very dicey, to say the least. I also want to say I'm really excited about the health savings account and the incentivizing the health savings account. If you look at page 75 or slide 75, if you take a young employee that enters into the division, and you can see if they take advantage of the new health savings plan, that would be $28 a month. Is that not right? Versus using the Key Care Expanded, which is $164. We're talking about $130, $140 savings per month. When you take that $130 or $140 per month, you're talking pretty close to about $1,800 a year. That's not chicken seed. That's real money. But when you add on to the fact that you're going to incentivize the deductible of $100 a month to get them close to the point where they might even want to add in some money to meet their deductible, that's a win-win situation. Now, I speak about it with great passion because I talk to my clients regularly about health insurance and how you can have your health insurance structured to maximize your particular benefit based off of your family situation. I will caution and say that this situation is not best for everyone. You need to have someone talk you through the advantages and the disadvantages and be very honest about where you and your family are at in your health insurance planning. But I'm really excited that our division has decided to lean forward and offer a benefit that's going to be extremely beneficial to our employees, not just in terms of containing health insurance costs, but there is an added benefit of putting money in this health savings account that at a later point in their life, if they never use the health insurance, the premium is theirs. See, under the current plan, the health insurance premiums that you pay, they go to the health insurance company and you see them no more. But when you take advantage of a health savings account and you put that premium aside and you don't use it or you don't need it, and you decide maybe at some later point in life you want to buy a long-term care policy, or you want to buy a Medicare supplement plan, or you just want to use it for something else, that premium dollar is yours. So I'm glad that we've done this for our employees, and I'm really excited about it. I guess you can tell by my voice. But I think it's a great benefit, and I'm really proud of the Finance Department for taking the lead in making sure that this benefit's available to Spotsylvania County employees. Thank you.
And I must say, Mr. Braswell, it was a co-led, finance and HR.
All right.
Ms. Colbert. So thank you, Ms. Colbert.
All right, we'll give HR some love, too. Let's move on to revised proposed CIP for 2020 and 2024.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Baker, Dr. Martin. Very quickly, if you look at slide number 78, it pertains to, as you recall, the draft CIP presentation summary that was presented to the board back in November 26th. And you will note that on the next slide, when we present it again as part of the budget, actually Dr. Baker, this was included in his budget presentation on Monday, on January 28th, that the numbers are somewhat different. And I want to explain why. The transportation and technology capital costs remain the same, but after we presented on 11/26, changes were communicated to us from the county that changes in the debt service requirement actually resulted in savings of $2.6 million that were then passed to the schools and enabled our school CIP to expend those monies for projects for FY19. In other words, the current year that we're in right now. So as we got together, we were able to repurpose some of those projects from, in particular, 2020 that pertain to safety. We were able to expedite those and actually include them now based on the seriousness of incidents that were occurring and are occurring, unfortunately, in schools throughout the country of a dangerous nature. So just as some examples, we were able in the capital maintenance budget to push forward into 19 some of the architectural alterations to the main entrances, phases 1 and 2. You'll note, for example, at Chancellor Elementary, Smith Station Elementary, Thornburg Middle School, those were the more complicated entrances, and we were able then, with that extra 2.6, to push them into FY19. So what that did was we were able to then reprioritize from 2020 to 2024 some of the projects. We were able to basically push them forward for the most part. But we did this in good faith. We felt it was extremely important. If we could expedite the completion of our entrances, of our safety entrances, and some other safety features like adding security film or anti-ballistic film on glass at some of our elementary schools that didn't have it, enhancing exterior lighting and things of that nature, all safety oriented. We thought that the sooner we were able to implement those and complete those projects, the better. So that enabled us to kind of prioritize our CIP for 2020, 2024. So we pushed some things out of that into 19 and then reprioritized. And that's why you see on the maintenance section, of the CIP budget from January 28th, or Monday, a different figure than what you saw back in November 26th. So we feel like it was a very positive move, and we are in the midst of completing those projects, and then we actually completed a year sooner than originally intended, which would be great. So by the end of this year, we should be completed with those major projects. And the next slide will show you the variance in the overall 5-year period. And you'll see about a $1.8 million increase over the 2020 to 2024 CIP. And that was because we were able to bring in some of the projects that originally were not going to make the 5-year window. We were able to bring them into the later years of the 2020-2024 CIP. And then the final slide, and I know that many of you have seen these firsthand, but it really gives you a good visual of Berkeley Elementary before and after. It doesn't really show up, unfortunately, as well on the screen as it might in hard copy. Thornburg Middle before and after picture there, and Chancellor High School. So we have just an example from each level of the schools that we were able to enhance the security of in the front entrance there. And you can visibly see these. I can't tell you how many compliments the principals and even my staff have received, because the public can actually see every day that these are used. And I think many in the public are somewhat relieved now that they feel their students are a little safer than they were prior to.
Mr. Upperco, you're done?
Yes.
Oh, you're done?
I'm done. I'm sorry. I was waiting for questions, but I was going to drop the mic, but I didn't have one to drop.
Give me a second to collect myself. Any questions? Ms. Phelps, go ahead.
I do. I know I think the last pre-budget meeting, there was asking a question about a bond referendum for CIP, and does the county have the borrowing authority for it? And is that where we're at? I mean, are we?
We're going to need a new bond to fulfill these projects in about 3 years' time, 3 fiscal years' time. And I know that there'll be a lot of gearing up for that. So and if you're asking, do we have the money to go through now 2020, 2024 and complete all those projects without a bond referendum, the answer would be no. We need a bond referendum in order to do that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was my next question. Okay, thank
Now, as
you.
a point of clarification, Ms. Phelps, we do want to say for 2020, we have adequate bond referendum authority. For 2021, we do. When you get to 2022, we have 16 of the 38 million. So prior to 2022, we will need to have a bond referendum. And we have started to engage in some conversations with the county finance staff.
Any more questions?
Mr. Chair, I move that we provide any directions and questions we need answered before the next work session, but other than that, hold any more until the next work session, since due to the lateness of the hour.
So we'll add that in with 4.01 when we deal with the next school board budget presentation date. Let me open by saying that we have a meeting on next Monday, and so we will be able to obviously engage in that particular meeting that's scheduled. That meeting that's scheduled. Now, the Board of Supervisors, the chairman and vice chair, met with myself and Dr. Meyer and Dr. Baker, and they asked us if we would be able to present on the 12th of February, a day after we approve our budget, and we told them that we would give it our best effort. Their concern had to do with setting up a briefing for the solar farm issue, and they were in a bit of a conundrum, if you will, in terms of being able to facilitate that. And so we told them that we would be willing to do that on the 12th if it would be beneficial to them. So at this time, what I'd like is for us to receive some form of concurrence from the board that we can present on the 12th, understanding that the chair and the vice chair would be the ones that were presenting on that particular day. And there would not be really a requirement for those that may have a scheduling conflict to be there if they weren't available. So with that being said, I'd like to hear any comments or concerns that we have from the board. Dr. Meyer?
Oh, we have to have a motion first.
Oh,
Okay, you want to take?
Give us a motion.
I make a motion to have February 12th with presentation to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, motion by Ms. Phelps. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Twigg. Okay, discussion?
I have a question on the motion. Are we with taking the 26th off our calendar completely?
That was, you were leading right into the rationale of why we were requested to consider having the
Well, I know it's 'cause of the
presentation on the
S-Power.
12th, because we were originally scheduled to go on the 26th. That particular date is a conflict for the Board of Supervisors, for them to be able to consider the matter at hand for them. Hence, we were asked whether we would consider the 12th, knowing it's an imposition on us being able to get ready. But there's where Mr. Braswell and myself said, we'll make it happen, and we'll help them. So we could scratch the 26th off of our obligation to meet with them. Thanks, Ms. Grant.
And I don't know, Dr. Meyer, please advise me, do we need to amend the motion to include the deletion of the 26th?
I think we should, because it was a commitment that we put on our calendar.
Okay. Ms. Phelps, would you like to? Okay, so, yeah, would you accept the friendly amendment to do that?
Yes, I'll accept the amendment.
Okay. Okay, so it's been moved that we present our budget to the Board of Supervisors on the 12th of February and delete from our schedule the 26th as a meeting. Ms. Shelley, did you have a?
Mr. Braswell, did they give you a time for the meeting?
I have to get back with you on that. I'm pretty sure it was going to be around the 4:30 timeframe, but I'm not 100% certain.
Oh, it was previously listed at 6, so now is it moved up to 4?
Now, what I did do, Mr. Braswell, I did reach out to the county finance staff. They did confirm that the meeting does start at 4:30, and they'll be working with county admin to provide us with a closer time frame.
Okay, so we're just going to assume 4:30. Okay.
Well, there's two slots that day, right? Aren't there two, there's a 4:30 and then at 6:30? Or is that just a 4:30 day?
4:30. Okay. So we'll call for the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries 7-0. Next steps, Ms. Gaines.
Thank you so much. In your handout, you will see next steps. We'll come back together February the 4th. Staff will take all of your final decisions on that particular day so that we can work towards the presentation and the booklet, and then make sure you're ready on February the 12th.
Thank you.
6:30, Mr. Blaine. Yes, sir. Here.
Moving on to 6, closing comments. Dr. Baker.
No, I have no more comments, but thank you to the board and also to the staff. I know this was a lot of information, very comprehensive. I appreciate everyone's focus and time this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. I want to thank staff, too, for a very comprehensive briefing and providing us with all the material we need in order to do our deliberations and make decisions. So I want to thank each and every one of you for just being out here tonight. I know you really wanted to do it. But at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn by Ms. Gramp, seconded by Ms. Shelley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing no objections, this meeting is adjourned.